I found out my wife and best friend have been stealing from me, planning to disappear together with my money. Now I've got a plan to turn the tables, but there's something I didn't see coming, and it might just blow everything up. Title: I Never Thought I'd Be Here. I can't use real names, but you get it. All right, Reddit. I really never thought I'd be writing something like this. Hell, I don't even know where to start, but I guess that's the whole point of coming here, right? I don't know what to do, and I need to get this off my chest. And no, I can't use real names. There's too much at stake, but let's call me John, my best friend Mike, and my wife, we'll call her Jane. A little backstory before I dive into the whole mess. I'm 27. Jane and I have been married for 5 years, together for a little longer than that. We've had the whole when are we going to have kids talk a few times now. It feels like we're getting close. I mean, I love her. I trust her. I've never doubted for a second that we were building a future together. We've been through some ups and downs, everyone has, but I've always felt like we were solid. I work a steady job, nothing flashy, but it pays the bills. The real dream, though, has been this business Mike and I have been working on for years. I've known Mike since high school. Our families are tight, like holiday dinners and weekend barbecues tight. He's practically my brother. We've always talked about starting a business together, and about 2 years ago, we actually started making it happen. Um, it's still in the early stages, but we've been pooling money for a while now, like saving up for the big launch. The plan is to go all in within the next year. It's exciting, and honestly, it feels like my escape plan from the mundane 9 to 5 grind. Everything was going fine, or at least I thought it was, until a couple of weeks ago. So I'm going over my finances one night. Jane's asleep on the couch after binge watching some Netflix, and I'm trying to balance everything for the month. No big deal, right? But as I'm going through the statements, I notice something off. A decent chunk of my savings is missing. Now, we're not talking life ruining money, but makes me stop and double check, and triple check, and triple check. At first, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just misremembering something. Maybe Jane took it out for something and forgot to tell me. I mean, we've always had this understanding that we check in with each other before making big withdrawals, but life's busy. Stuff slips through the cracks. No big deal. But then I dig a little deeper. There's a transfer to an account I don't recognize. And it's in my wife's name, like a whole separate account that I had no idea existed. Now, my brain is starting to race, but I try to talk myself down. Maybe it's something she set up a while ago and forgot about. Maybe it's for a surprise or a vacation fund, or I don't know. My mind's grasping for any explanation that isn't what my gut is starting to tell me. But here's the thing, I didn't ask her. I should have. That's what a good husband would do, right? Sit down and talk it out. But something about it just felt wrong. I couldn't shake this weird feeling like there was more to it. So I don't say anything that night. I don't say anything the next day or the next week. Then it gets worse. I'm sitting on the couch with Jane one evening, and she goes to take a shower. Her phone's on the coffee table. I swear to you, Reddit, I've never been the guy to snoop through someone's phone. I've never had a reason to. But that night, with the missing money in my head and this nagging feeling that something isn't right, I don't know. I just did it. I know that was wrong. I feel shitty even admitting it, but I had to know. I had to. I opened her texts, and that's when everything came crashing down. There's a thread with Mike, my best friend, Mike. The texts between them were, I don't even know how to describe it. They weren't romantic or anything, but they were talking about money, my money, about how they've been slowly siphoning it from my account without me noticing, about how they were planning to keep doing it until they had enough to disappear, to just run away together, my wife and my best friend. I still feel like I'm in shock writing this. I mean, Mike, the guy I've known for more than a decade, the guy I'm building a future with, my wife. How long has this been going on? How long have they been plotting behind my back? The betrayal, I can't even put it into words. It's like this physical weight on my chest that I can't shake. I don't know how to confront either of them. I don't even know if I should confront them yet. I spent the next few days just processing. Jane acted like everything was normal, like she hadn't been plotting to drain me dry and run off with my best friend. Mike's been texting me like usual, talking about the business, the future. The worst part is, I don't even know what to do next. Do I confront them? Do I go to a lawyer? Do I try to catch them in the act? I'm stuck between wanting to blow everything up and wanting to play it smart to come up with some clever way to make them pay without tipping my hand too soon. I don't want to believe it, but I know it's real. And now I can't unknow it. I've been thinking about getting a forensic accountant involved just to figure out how much they've taken. I want to make sure I have all the facts before I do anything. But every time I see Jane or talk to Mike, I just, it's like this knife twisting deeper into my gut. Sorry, I don't know if this is making sense anymore. I feel like I'm rambling. I just needed to get this out. I don't even know how to process any of this, let alone how to act. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening. I'll try to post an update if anything changes, but for now, I'm just lost. Update 2 weeks later. Okay, Reddit. A lot of you asked for updates, so here I am. Yeah, things got wild. So after posting here and reading through all your advice, I decided to play it cool for a bit. No huge confrontations, no blowing things up. I needed more info. I hired a private investigator, didn't tell anyone about it, not even my family. I just needed to be 100% sure before I did anything. And man, am I glad I did. The PI didn't take long. Turns out Jane and Mike have been siphoning money from my account for almost a year. But it gets worse. Jane's been funneling it into this secret account, which Mike has been using to fund some shady investments. Not even for them to run away like I thought at first, but for Mike to use for the business I'm supposedly building with him. So yeah, they weren't planning to run away together, at least not right now. The whole disappearing thing was more about setting themselves up for when they'd eventually leave me out in the cold. I confronted them, finally. I didn't go in gunsing, I played it smart. I showed them the evidence, laid it all out. Jane cried. Mike denied it at first, then came clean. I don't know where things are going now. Jane and I are in this weird limbo. She swears she wasn't trying to hurt me, that she thought this would be for us in the long run. Mike's out. I cut him out of the business, and I'm going through the legal side of things to make sure I get back what's mine. I'm still wrecked. I don't know what's going to happen with my marriage, or if I'll ever be able to trust anyone like I trusted Mike again. But at least now I have some control over the situation. I'm not just sitting here, wondering if the people I love are stabbing me in the back. I guess that's all for now. I'll keep you posted. Update: the fallout with family. Hey Reddit, I'm back again. This will probably be my last update for a while, but I figured I owed you all one, especially after everything that's gone down. I decided to take your advice and talk to my family, and things got, well, complicated. I also couldn't stop thinking about how connected Mike's family is with mine, so I figured it was only a matter of time before everything came out. I'll start with my family first. My family's reaction. I sat my parents down a few days after I found out everything, when I had all the facts from the PI and after confronting Jane and Mike. I didn't tell them the full story at first, just that I'd been betrayed by both Jane and Mike. I tried to keep it as clean and simple as possible because I didn't want them to fly off the handle before I even finished explaining. But of course they did. My mom was furious. She always liked Jane, but hearing that my wife had been secretly taking money from me, let alone that Mike was involved, flipped a switch. She was already talking about lawyers, throwing out suggestions that I move back in with them temporarily, anything to get me away from the situation. She was ready to cut ties with both Jane and Mike, no questions asked. My dad, on the other hand, was quieter. He was angry, but he's more of the type to think things through before reacting. He told me that I need to handle this smartly, especially with Jane. He reminded me that if I wanted any chance of reconciliation, which at that point I still wasn't sure about, I needed to keep things calm for now. He said Mike was done in his eyes, though. After all the years of knowing him, he just couldn't wrap his head around how Mike could betray me like that. And then there's my younger brother. He doesn't live nearby, but I called him to fill him in. He was in shock, mostly because Mike's been like a big brother to him. They're pretty close, so this hit him hard too. He didn't say much, but I could tell he was pissed. More at Mike than Jane, but still, he hasn't spoken to either of them since. Jane's family's reaction. So, I didn't plan to talk to Jane's family myself, but when Jane found out I told my parents, she decided to come clean to hers. And honestly, that was a whole other level of messy. Jane's parents have always been overly supportive of her, the kind that always think their daughter can do no wrong. When she finally told them the truth about the money, they immediately went into defensive mode. According to her, they tried to downplay it, saying things like, "It's not that much money," and "You're married. What's his is yours." They really didn't seem to grasp the magnitude of what she did. They acted like it was some little misunderstanding between us, and I should just get over it. I'm not surprised, but hearing that made me even angrier. It's like they couldn't accept that their daughter could ever betray someone like that. Jane told me she felt awful for what she'd done, but I'm wondering how much of that is her own guilt and how much is pressure from her family to make this no big deal. Her parents even suggested that we go to couples therapy, but I don't know. I'm not sure therapy can fix what's broken here. Mike's family's reaction. This is where things got real complicated. Like I said before, our families are close. Mike's parents have known mine for decades. They're basically like extended family at this point. When everything came to light, I didn't even have to tell them. My mom did it for me. She felt like they deserved to know what their son had been up to, and honestly, I can't blame her. Mike's parents, wow. His mom was in complete shock. She called me right after my mom told her and kept apologizing over and over, like it was her fault. I could hear how heartbroken she was. She kept saying that she couldn't believe Mike would do something like this, that this isn't the son she raised. She asked if we could all sit down and talk things out, like this was something that could be fixed with a family meeting. I told her I didn't think that was a good idea, at least not right now. Mike's dad was a whole different story. He's a no-nonsense guy, and he straight up told me that if Mike was pulling this kind of stunt, he deserved whatever was coming to him. There was no sugarcoating it. He said he raised his son to be better than this, and if Mike screwed me over, then he needed to face the consequences. I think he's just as angry as I am, but at his own son. I found out later that Mike's dad went over to his place and confronted him. Mike called me afterward, but I didn't pick up. I've heard through the grapevine that their relationship is tense, to say the least, right now. The fallout. So, where does this leave me? Honestly, I'm still figuring it out. Jane's been staying at her parents' place for the past week. We haven't talked much other than logistical stuff. She keeps texting me about wanting to talk, wanting to work through things, but I don't know if I can. I haven't made any final decisions, but I'm leaning more and more toward a clean break. As for Mike, I haven't spoken to him since I confronted him. He's been radio silent, probably because he knows there's no fixing this. I've been meeting with a lawyer to make sure I'm protected financially, getting the business stuff sorted out, and trying to reclaim what he took. My trust in him is shattered, and there's no coming back from that. My family's been a huge support through all of this. I'm honestly grateful for them right now, even if they're ready to scorch earth in my defense. Jane's family, well, they're trying to play it off like it's not a big deal, which is frustrating. But what matters most is what I do next, and I'm still working through that. Anyway, that's where things stand for now. If you're reading this, thanks for sticking with me through all the chaos. It's been a rough road, but at least now I'm not navigating it alone. I'll update again if anything major changes, but for now, I'm focusing on getting my life back together, one piece at a time.
Anonymous, please help before I lose my mind. Okay. First of all, no shoes, please. I get enough of that from my mother-in-law, and I don't need it here, too. It's already embarrassing enough. Let me just spill everything out, and if you all want to throw tomatoes later, fine. But for now, I need advice, or a drink, or maybe both. Here's the thing. I came to America about, 15 years ago. Yes, I know. I sound like the typical Russian woman who got off the plane and immediately fell into the arms of an American man. But no, it's not that dramatic. I married Greg, and honestly, it's been good. Great, even. We have a solid friendship, fantastic sex, which is a plus, right? 2 kids, a decent life in the suburbs. I run, I do yoga, I even have this weird habit of drinking kombucha because, well, when in America, you get it. Life looks pretty good from the outside. Except, enter him. Let's call him Mark, because if I say his real name, someone will track him down, and I'll be the next headline on the Wives Behaving Badly page. Mark is married too. Wonderful wife. They seem perfect on paper. But why did I have to fall for him? For 2 years now, I've been pining like a teenager. 2 years of mentally torturing myself, pretending everything's okay when I'm dying inside. It's like I'm in some bad soap opera, except there's no cheating. No affair. Just this toxic, obsessive, soul-crushing infatuation that won't let me go. Ladies, I've tried everything. 4 psychologists? 4. And each one, God bless them, dug into my childhood like it's some kind of goldmine of trauma. But all I can think about is Mark. I sit there, nodding like a good patient while secretly scrolling through his social media. And my husband? He has no clue. I mean, why would he? We're good. Great sex, great kids, great life. And yet, I cry into my pillow every night, imagining what it would be like if Mark just, swept me off my feet. Stupid, right? I've even been blocking and unblocking him on Instagram every 3 days, like a lunatic. Block, unblock, block again. And then I think, maybe today, he'll message me, even though I know that's not going to happen. His wife is this gorgeous, perfect woman. I think she bakes bread from scratch and volunteers for animal rescues on weekends. I once tried to bake bread too, just to see if I could be her. It ended in flames. Literal flames. I had to call the fire department. And don't even start with the just talk to a therapist advice. Been there, done that, got the Prozac. Honestly, talking to a therapist about this feels like showing up at a car mechanic when your heart's broken. They want to talk about my daddy issues, and all I want is to stop checking if Mark posted a new story. So here's where the crazy part comes in. And yes, I know I'm already half crazy. I've convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, if I wait long enough, something magical will happen. He'll leave his wife. I'll leave Greg. We'll ride off into the sunset and everyone will live happily ever after. Except that's not how life works, right? I wouldn't leave Greg. Even the idea of leaving him makes me nauseous. I'd miss him. But I can't stop thinking about Mark either. I'm stuck, ladies. Like a Russian nesting doll, layer after layer of misery and guilt. I should have matured by now. Moved on. Grown out of this. Whatever this is. But no. Here I am, 2 years deep in this obsession, lying to myself, to Greg, and essentially running a one-woman drama production in my head. Oh, and now I've started listening to these ridiculous energy detachment meditations. You know the ones? The soft-spoken, mystical types who tell you to let go of toxic energy and free yourself. I made it about 5 minutes into one of those before I stopped and unblocked Mark again, like an addict who can't quit. And then there's the dream. You know, the one where you wake up with your heart pounding, sweaty palms, and feeling like you've lived an entire lifetime in 5 minutes? It's always the same. Mark and I, in some impossibly beautiful cabin in the woods, just being together. It's peaceful, it's intimate, and it's always just out of reach. I wake up, roll over, and Greg's snoring beside me like a freight train. The guilt hits me like a sledgehammer, and I'm right back to pretending everything's fine. But it's not fine. Not at all. Now, before you judge me too harshly, let me just say I've tried to make sense of it all. Maybe it's the excitement I'm craving. Or maybe it's just that thing you can't explain, where someone crawls under your skin and stays there like an itch you can't scratch. I've even thought about cutting all ties, deleting his number, unfollowing him for good, but then I see him at a school event or a neighborhood barbecue, and it's like someone hit the restart button on my obsession. I'm a moth to his flame, and let's be real, he's not even that hot. Objectively, he's just average. But to me, he might as well be a damn Greek god. Okay, so here's the plot twist, because you thought the mess was already bad enough, right? Guess who else has started getting a little too friendly with Mark? My best friend, Lena. Yeah, my go-to person, the one who knows all my dirty little secrets. I saw them chatting at a neighborhood picnic, and now I'm spiraling. What if she's into him too? What if he likes her back? What if they're secretly sneaking around behind my back? I mean, come on, is this my karma for being an emotional cheater? And then, just to spice things up a bit more, Greg's suddenly gotten all romantic on me. He's planning a surprise weekend getaway for us. Just us. No kids. I should be thrilled, right? But all I can think about is how guilty I feel. What if he knows? What if he's trying to fix something he thinks is broken? The worst part? I'm not even excited. I should be planning lingerie and spa days, but instead, I'm stalking Mark's Instagram, wondering if he'll post something while I'm away. So there you have it, girls. I'm a mess. A disaster wrapped in Lululemon leggings. I've got a great husband, a beautiful life, and yet I'm mentally torturing myself over some fantasy that's never going to happen. What do I even do at this point? Wait for it to pass? Pray for amnesia? Or maybe I just need to sign up for a bread-making class with Mark's wife and get it over with. Help. Or at least send wine. Okay, so fast forward a few weeks, and there I am, sitting in the car with Greg, driving to what he's called a surprise destination. I'm trying to get excited. I really am. But my mind is still stuck on Mark, and Lena, by the way, because I've been seeing them hang out more and more. Like, okay, maybe I'm paranoid. Maybe they're just friends. But why is she laughing at his jokes all the time now? She never used to find him that funny. So yeah, I'm stuck in my mental chaos while Greg's chatting about hiking trails or hot springs or something. The drive is long, and I keep checking my phone under the pretense of looking at the map, but we both know it's not that. Mark posted a story with his wife. A cute picnic, of course. Perfect lighting, perfect smiles. Oh, and Lena liked it. Great. Just great. So, we finally arrive at this stunning cabin. It's straight out of a postcard, tucked in the woods, with these big, floor-to-ceiling windows that make it feel like you're part of nature. Greg's all excited, unloading the car, and I'm standing there like an idiot, staring at the place and thinking, this would be perfect for that fantasy I keep having about Mark. You know, the one where it's just the two of us, no one else around, just being together. I feel the guilt clawing at my stomach, but what else is new? Greg comes up behind me, wraps his arms around my waist, and whispers, "What do you think? Just us, no kids, no distractions." And okay, that should be romantic, right? He's trying. I get it, but all I can think about is how I'm not here. I'm halfway between wondering if Lena's texting Mark right now and feeling like the world's biggest hypocrite. We get inside, and Greg's already in full vacation mode, pouring wine, just setting the mood. And it's nice. It really is. I feel this tiny flicker of warmth for him. Like, yes, this man has been nothing but good to me, and here I am, being an emotional train wreck over someone else. So, I tell myself, let it go for the weekend. Just focus on Greg. Be in the moment. And girls, let me tell you, I tried. I really did. Greg was being amazing, cooking dinner, lighting candles, all the cliches that should have made me swoon. And we had this whole romantic evening planned out. Dinner, wine, and then some, adult activities by the fireplace. But of course, my mind doesn't cooperate. No. My mind decides to sabotage me like usual. Halfway through the evening, Greg gets a text, and I see his face change. It's subtle, but after all these years, I know his moods. He brushes it off, says it's work, but I know that's a lie. I mean, it's the weekend. We're in the middle of nowhere. Who's texting him from work? I didn't press it, though. Instead, I grabbed more wine and decided to drown my overactive imagination. Later that night, after a very passionate round of activities, one where I actually managed to focus on my real husband for once, Greg starts acting weird. He's lying there, staring at the ceiling, and I can feel the tension radiating off him. And I'm thinking, what now? Is he regretting the weekend? Is something wrong with us? So I do what any sane wife would do in that moment. I pretend I'm asleep. Yup, I pulled the classic, "Oh no, I'm so tired. I can't possibly deal with whatever emotional bomb you're about to drop." But Greg, bless his heart, decides that's the perfect time to confess. He rolls over, puts his arm around me, and whispers, "I need to tell you something." At this point, my heart is pounding because what now? I mean, he's either about to tell me he's been cheating on me or that he has some terminal illness, and I am not prepared for either. He takes a deep breath and says, "You've probably noticed I've been a little distant this past year." Oh, you don't say, Greg? I mean, sure. I've been distracted with my own Mark-related mental drama, but now that he mentions it, yeah, there's been something off. So I stay quiet, just letting him get it out. And it's because, well, I've been dealing with something really difficult. You know Mark's wife? She's been coming onto me. I swear, the silence in that room was deafening. I was lying there, my mind short-circuiting, trying to process what he just said. Did I hear that right? Did Greg just say that Mark's wife, the same wife I've been quietly comparing myself to for the last 2 years, has been hitting on my husband? I can't even describe the wave of emotions that hit me. Part of me was furious. Part of me wanted to laugh because, of course, she's been after Greg. Why wouldn't she? But mostly, I felt sick to my stomach. All this time, I've been obsessing over Mark, and here his wife is, trying to get into my husband's pants. What kind of twisted universe is this? Greg kept talking, saying how he didn't want to burden me with it, how he's been trying to avoid her, how he didn't know how to handle it without making things awkward between us and them. He even admitted that he was scared I'd think something happened, even though nothing ever did. He was just struggling, trying to keep things normal while resisting her advances. I wanted to scream, not because I thought Greg had cheated. He hadn't. I could tell that much. But because this whole thing was so insane. I've been living in my head, pining over Mark, thinking I'm the one in some secret emotional drama, and the whole time his wife has been after my husband. And now I had 2 options. I could tell Greg everything. The whole sordid mess about my obsession with Mark, the tears, the therapy, the unblocking and blocking on Instagram like a crazy person. Or I could keep it to myself and pretend none of this was happening. So what did I do? I laughed. I laughed so hard I almost cried. Poor Greg looked at me like I'd lost it completely. But what else was I supposed to do? The situation was ridiculous. His wife wants my husband, I want her husband, and neither of us is doing anything about it. It's like some bizarre love quadrangle where no one's even had an affair. After I finally stopped laughing, and Greg still looked concerned, I told him, "You know what? I think we're both insane." He didn't argue. Instead, he just kissed me on the forehead and said, "Let's just try to enjoy the rest of the weekend, okay?" And that, ladies, is where we left it. A romantic weekend in the woods, where I'm supposed to be rekindling things with my husband while simultaneously realizing that Mark's wife has been after him this whole time. I can't even begin to process how I'm going to deal with Mark or his wife when we get back. Maybe I'll just bake them both some bread. The rest of the weekend? Well, let's just say I spent half of it sipping wine and staring into the woods, and the other half trying not to laugh every time I looked at Greg. I mean, how am I supposed to enjoy a romantic getaway when all I can think about is how tangled this whole mess has become? When we get back home, things go back to normal, or whatever normal is when you've just found out that your husband has been dodging the advances of the woman you've been emotionally cheating with. I've got kids to deal with, laundry piling up, and Lena asking how the trip went, all while I'm just waiting for the next bomb to drop. Then it happens. A few days later, I run into Mark. Of course, I wasn't planning to, but that's how the universe works when you're in the middle of a disaster. It throws you right into the middle of it. I'm at the grocery store, picking out avocados or something equally mundane, when I feel someone behind me. "Hey, stranger," I hear. And I know that voice anywhere. I turn, and there's Mark, holding a basket full of organic kale and looking way too good for someone who's just grocery shopping. I almost drop my avocado. Because now, standing in front of him, all I can think about is the fact that his wife has been throwing herself at Greg, and I've been obsessing over him for 2 years. What am I even supposed to say? But before I can even open my mouth, he smiles and says, "I've been meaning to text you. Things have been weird lately. You got a minute to chat?" Oh God, here it comes. I nod, trying to act casual, and we wander over to the little coffee shop in the store. We sit down, and I'm bracing myself to tell him everything about his wife, about Greg, about the whole tangled web of insanity. But before I can, he starts talking. "I don't know what's going on with her," he says, running a hand through his hair. "My wife. She's been so distant this past year. I know things get stale in a marriage, but it's been different. Like she's not even interested in trying anymore. I don't know. I've been feeling like I'm just a roommate at this point. I freeze. Distant? Distant because she's been busy trying to seduce my husband? The irony here is just too much, but I keep quiet, nodding like I'm totally following along. And I know this is going to sound bad, Mark continues, looking genuinely uncomfortable, but I think that's why I've kind of been, well, flirting with Lena. She's easy to talk to, and I don't know, it's just been nice to have someone to connect with. But now I feel guilty because it's not like I want anything serious with her. It's been lonely, you know? Lena. My Lena. My best friend Lena. I swear, I could feel my brain short-circuiting as he said it. So, while I've been obsessing over Mark and torturing myself, he's been flirting with Lena? And now he's sitting here feeling guilty about it, while his wife has been after my husband? I take a deep breath, trying not to explode on the spot. I mean, what are the odds? It's like we're all living in some bizarre reality show, and the producers are throwing out plot twists just to see who breaks first. Yeah, I managed to say. I know what you mean. Oh, I know what you mean. All right. I didn't mean for it to happen, he continues, looking genuinely torn. It's just, with everything being so off with my wife, I guess I just needed someone to talk to. And Lena's been, well, there. He pauses, rubbing the back of his neck. I feel bad. Really bad. I haven't done anything with her, obviously, but just the flirting, it feels wrong, you know? Wrong? Oh, Mark, if only you knew the half of it. At this point, I'm not sure if I should laugh, cry, or throw my coffee in his face. But instead, I just sit there, nodding along like some kind of supportive friend, all while my brain is screaming, tell him. Tell him everything. About his wife, about Greg, about the fact that we've both been living in this ridiculous fantasy world for way too long. But I can't. I just can't. Not yet, anyway. It feels like if I tell him now, it'll break something fragile and delicate that neither of us can fix. So instead, I take a deep breath and say, look, marriage is hard. Sometimes things get messy. Maybe you just need to talk to her, work things out. God, I sound like one of those advice columnists, don't I? Mark sighs, shaking his head. I've tried. I don't know, maybe I'll try again. I hate feeling like this. I hate that I'm even talking about this with you. I'm sorry. He looks genuinely torn up about it, and for a second, I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. But then I remember that his wife has been cozying up to my husband, and any sympathy I had disappears. We sit there in awkward silence for a few minutes, sipping our coffees, before he finally says, I guess I just needed to get that off my chest. Thanks for listening. I don't know what I'd do without you. And that, ladies, was the moment I realized just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Mark, my impossible crush, has been feeling distant from his wife and using Lena as his emotional crutch. Meanwhile, his wife has been hitting on Greg. And I'm stuck in the middle of this web of lies and flirtations, pretending like I'm somehow above it all. I tell him it's going to be okay, that everything will work itself out. But deep down, I'm not so sure anymore. All I know is this mess is far from over, and I'm still not sure how or if I'm ever going to get out of it. I endured a Karen until her kids decided to come after my kids. Why did I even bother? Ladies, this is going to be long. If you have the patience to read through it, I truly appreciate it because I'm about to explode from everything going on, and I don't even know what I want more. Advice, validation, or maybe just a collective sigh from other women who understand the madness that is being caught between our adult problems and our children's lives. Anyway, here goes nothing. We moved to this new city 2 years ago. Starting over was hard, but after a few months, we found our footing. And I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of fun at first. New place, new opportunities, a fresh start. We slowly found new friends. The community here is tight-knit but welcoming, and soon we had our circle of families. It felt perfect. Our kids were all the same age. Our husbands bonded over whatever it is men bond over, grilling beer sports, who knows? And us wives, we clicked. We'd go to the park for barbecues, hit the lake on weekends, celebrate birthdays together, and occasionally, the girls, that's us, would take our own trips downtown for coffee and some much-needed adult conversation. At first I thought, wow, this is amazing. Moving wasn't so bad after all. We had a rhythm. Our little community was like a well-oiled machine, and I was proud of it. Proud of how we all fit together like a puzzle. We were new friends, sure, but it felt solid, like we had something good going on. Then, 4 months ago, the new family moved in. You know how it is when someone new joins the mix. You're excited, but you're also a little cautious. Will they fit in? Will they mess up the dynamic? I shouldn't have worried. Not because they fit in. Oh, how I wish they had. But because my cautious instinct was dead on. I first met her, let's call her Olga, at the pool. Her kids seemed nice enough. Her husband was quiet. Too quiet, as it turns out. But she was a force. And not in a good way. She's the type that takes over any conversation, any space, any situation. At first, I thought, okay, maybe she's just trying to fit in. We've all been the new person at some point, so I gave her the benefit of the doubt. But no, she wasn't trying to fit in. She was trying to take over. Imagine this. A group of women who've built a lovely, comfortable dynamic, and suddenly this hurricane of a woman storms in and starts laying down rules like she's the queen of our group. We're not going there. We're not doing that. That's dangerous. This is how we should do things. What's worse is, she didn't even frame it as suggestions. These were flat-out demands. Like, who does that? And her husband? Silent. A mute. He gets along fine with our husbands, but when it comes to reining in his wife, not a word. Just stands there, smiling and nodding while she takes over everything. Our group, our beautifully balanced group, started falling apart. Some of the families, like mine, couldn't handle her bossy attitude. We weren't about to let her dictate how we live our lives. But 2 of the families, they stuck with her. Oh, they grumble about her behind her back. I've heard them complain that she's pushy, controlling, impossible. But do they do anything about it? Nope. They just go along with whatever she says, like little puppets. It's pathetic, really. And then there's my closest friend in this whole mess. Let's call her Lena. She and I bonded more than anyone else in the group. We were inseparable. Our kids played together constantly. Our husbands got along great. We even carpooled to events. So when Olga swooped in and Lena didn't just fall for it, but actually stayed with her, that hurt. She calls me all the time, complaining about Olga, about how impossible she is, but when I ask her why she doesn't just stand up to her or come back to the group that actually values her, she clams up. Oh, I don't want to hurt her feelings, she says. She's really not that bad. Seriously? Not that bad? She's an emotional tyrant. Now it's like Lena's living a double life. She meets up with us in secret, terrified that Olga will find out. I kid you not, she tells her kids not to mention anything to Olga's kids. Her husband, too. It's like they're living in some sort of spy thriller, always covering their tracks, always looking over their shoulders. I tell her she's being ridiculous, that this isn't high school, but she just shrugs it off. It's easier this way, she says. Easier for whom? Because it sure isn't easier for her. Or me. The bombshell hit when the kids let something slip at school. Of course they did. Kids talk. Somehow, it got back to Olga that Lena and her family were still hanging out with us. And she lost it. Lena called me in tears, not just crying, but hysterical, saying Olga had chewed her out and now she didn't know what to do. And then, to top it all off, she blamed my kids. Can you believe that? She actually accused my kids of being the ones to spill the secret, as if I'm going to make my kids lie or sneak around. No, thank you. If anyone should be ashamed here, it's her for teaching her kids to keep secrets. So now, Lena won't call me. It's been a week of silence after her meltdown, and while I feel bad for her, I don't feel guilty. Not even a little. My kids aren't the bad guys here, and I'll be damned if I let her or anyone else make them feel like they are. But here's the real kicker, the part that's driving me up the wall. At school, Lena's kids and Olga's kids have now turned against mine. That's the part that stings the most. My kids don't deserve this. They were all such good friends, and now because of this mess between the adults, they're suffering. My kids, of course, have other friends, and thank God for that. But still, they've noticed the shift, and it's breaking my heart. Kids shouldn't have to deal with this. And this is where I'm stuck, ladies. I don't care about Olga. I don't care if I ever see her again, honestly. But I do care about Lena. Or at least, I did. Now I'm starting to wonder if she was ever really my friend in the first place. If she can so easily throw me and my family under the bus, what kind of friendship is that? And then there's the kids. I don't know what to do. I can't make other kids like mine, but I hate that they're being dragged into this adult drama. I've tried talking to Lena, telling her that this has to stop, that our kids shouldn't be suffering because of all this nonsense. But she's stuck in her own head, wrapped up in her guilt and fear of upsetting Olga. It's like Olga's got some kind of hold over her, and I just don't get it. Why would anyone let someone like that control their life? And to add insult to injury, I heard through the grapevine that Olga's planning some huge party next month. And guess what? Lena's helping her plan it. The same Lena who's supposedly miserable under Olga's thumb, the same Lena who calls me to complain about her. I'm starting to wonder if Lena actually enjoys this drama. Maybe she likes playing both sides. Maybe it makes her feel important. So now I'm at a crossroads. Do I keep trying to salvage my friendship with Lena, knowing that she's never going to stand up to Olga? Do I just let it go, accept that people change, and move on? And how do I help my kids through this without making them feel like they're caught in the middle of something they don't even understand? They're just kids. They should be worrying about play dates and homework, not who's on whose side in some ridiculous adult feud. I know this was long, but I had to get it off my chest. If you've made it this far, thank you. I really need to hear from you all. Has anyone else dealt with this kind of situation? What did you do? Because right now, I'm at a complete loss. And just when you think this couldn't get more insane, I heard from another mom, one who stayed neutral in this whole mess, that Olga's been gossiping about me behind my back. She's telling people that I'm the one who's controlling, that I'm the one driving a wedge between the group. Can you imagine? The nerve of this woman. Part 2, a little payback. Ladies, it's time for an update. And believe me, things have gone from bad to worse, if that's even possible. You remember the nonsense with Olga and Lena, and how our little social group was crumbling under the weight of one woman's dictatorship. I thought maybe, just maybe, things would die down after a few weeks of silence. I tried to stay out of it, focus on my own life, let them do their thing. After all, I don't have time to play high school games. I have a family to take care of and kids with actual important problems like school. But of course, when it rains, it pours. First, I noticed a change in my kids. At home, they seemed fine. They're good at shrugging things off, which is something I've always admired about them. But at school, something was off. They were quieter, not as excited about their usual activities, and started making excuses for why they didn't want to hang out with certain friends anymore. I chalked it up to normal kid stuff at first. Maybe a spat between friends, the kind of thing that blows over in a day or two. But this didn't blow over. Turns out, the real reason my kids were suddenly losing friends and coming home in bad moods, it's because the ringleader herself, Olga, had taken her petty little feud to a new level. Oh no, she wasn't satisfied with just poisoning her inner circle against me. That would have been too easy. She had to go after my kids, her kids, along with Lena's. And isn't that a betrayal that stings? Decided that my children were now public enemy number 1 at school. Bullying, whispers, dirty looks, you name it. They turned the playground into a war zone. All because of what? Because their mothers have issues that they can't sort out like grown-ups? Can you believe the audacity of this woman? And Lena? Her kids were in on it too. That's the part that really floored me. I had given her the benefit of the doubt, thought maybe she was just weak-willed, maybe she was just scared of upsetting Olga. But no, turns out she's just spineless. Her kids are treating mine like they're beneath them, and she's doing absolutely nothing about it. All those complaints, all those teary phone calls about how she hated the way Olga controlled her, what a joke. She's just as bad. No, she's worse, because at least Olga's upfront about being a dictator. Lena pretends she's better, but when it comes down to it, she's complicit. Now, let me be clear. I can take a lot. I've been around the block, I've seen my share of drama, and I know how to pick my battles. But when it comes to my kids, all bets are off. You mess with my kids, and you've declared war. And Olga, Lena, and their little army of pint-sized bullies, they've made a huge mistake. So what did I do? I'll tell you what I didn't do. I didn't sit around feeling sorry for myself or my kids. I didn't wallow or wait for the school to handle it. Because let's be real, schools rarely handle bullying in any meaningful way. No, I decided to take matters into my own hands. First, I had a little chat with the school. It wasn't hard to make a few well-placed phone calls and drop some choice information about Olga's family and their involvement in a certain incident at the school's last fundraiser. Let's just say, not everyone's as squeaky clean as they pretend to be, and I made sure the right ears heard the right things. Suddenly, Olga and her family weren't quite the golden couple everyone thought they were. The principal, who had been conveniently ignoring the bullying up to this point, suddenly took a much keener interest in what was happening. Funny how that works. But that was just the beginning. I've got a bit of a talent for finding things out. And what I found out about Olga and her precious little family would make your jaw drop. Let's just say, when you're the kind of person who spends so much time criticizing others, maybe you should be a bit more careful about what skeletons you've got hiding in your own closet. Without going into too much detail, because I don't want to get into too much trouble, let's just say that Olga's husband hasn't exactly been a faithful one. And I'm not the only one who knows. How did I use this information? Well, I might have casually mentioned it at a PTA meeting, loud enough for a few key gossip-loving moms to overhear. The story spread like wildfire. Suddenly, people were looking at Olga in a whole new light. Her perfect little image? Cracked. People started asking questions. And what happens when people start asking questions? The truth comes out, or at least enough of it to cause some damage. The best part? I didn't have to lift a finger beyond that. The gossip mill did the rest. By the time the next school event rolled around, Olga was practically a pariah. And Lena, well, she tried to distance herself from Olga, but it was too late. People lumped them together, and honestly, I'm fine with that. Birds of a feather and all that. And you know what? The bullying stopped. Almost overnight. Funny how kids will turn on each other as soon as they see their parents lose status. Suddenly, my kids weren't the outcasts anymore. They were invited to birthday parties, the whispers in the hall stopped, and the dirty looks were a thing of the past. It's amazing how quickly things turn around when the power dynamic shifts. I'm not saying I feel proud of everything I did. I'm not a saint. But when you're a mom, you do what you have to do to protect your kids. And if that means knocking someone like Olga off her high horse, so be it. She's had it coming for a long time, and honestly, the world's a better place with her reputation in tatters. As for Lena, she tried to reach out, tried to mend fences after Olga went down in flames. She even had the nerve to send me a long, rambling text about how she never meant for any of this to happen, and how she misses our friendship. Please, does she think I'm stupid? She only wants to make nice now that she has no one else to hide behind. I haven't responded, and I don't plan to. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. In the end, my kids are happy, I'm free of the toxic nonsense, and Olga? Well, she's got a lot more to worry about than our little group of moms now. And that, my friends, is what I call karma. After my parents divorced, my dad dragged me back to Italy, where things went from bad to worse. Subject: my life is a nightmare, and it's all my dad's fault. So this is my life now. I literally don't even know where to start because everything is so messed up, but I guess it all begins with my parents. Obviously, 7 years ago, they got divorced. Not like I didn't see it coming or anything. Trust me, when you're hearing them scream at each other every night and then do that whole silent treatment thing for days, you kind of figure out what's about to happen. But I thought, okay, they'll split up and things will settle down eventually, right? Wrong. Things did not settle down. In fact, they got worse. Let me paint you a picture. My mom, she's off living her perfect little life with her perfect new husband and their perfect little kids. Like, seriously, she's got this whole Stepford thing going on now, with the suburban house and the Pinterest-worthy backyard and the kids who are apparently better than me in every possible way. I'm not even exaggerating. I haven't seen her in ages because she doesn't want to see me. I know, right? Isn't that just the best feeling ever? She literally has 2 brand new kids and basically pretends like I'm not even her daughter anymore. Oh, she'll send me a birthday card. Sometimes. But does she call? No. Does she visit? LOL, no. It's like I was the practice child and now she's got it right, so I've been phased out. Cool, right? But let's get to the real star of this disaster, my dad. Ugh, where do I even start with him? He's been raising me on his own, which, fine, I guess that's something. But lately he's been acting like America is the worst place on earth. Like constantly going off about how the country's too fast, too expensive, too everything. He's obsessed with how things used to be better back in Italy, as if I care? I thought it was just one of his things, you know? Like when he goes on a rant about how no one knows how to make real lasagna anymore. But no, he was serious. Really serious. So now here I am in Italy, because apparently my dad decided he couldn't take America anymore and figured the best way to fix that was to uproot my entire life and drag me halfway across the world to his home. His home, not mine. Home for me was back in the States with my friends and my school and, everything I cared about. But no. Apparently, my dad thought it would be super fun to drop me into a country where I don't even speak the language. Like, thanks for the heads up, Dad. Appreciate it. The worst part, he's like, happy about it. I'm not even joking. He's acting like he's found some magical secret to life by moving back to Italy. He's all, oh, Bella, the air here is so much fresher. And the pace of life is so much slower here. Like, can you chill? He's reconnecting with his old friends, his family, his roots or whatever, and I'm just here. Completely alone. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like we're in two different worlds. He's living his best life while I'm drowning over here. And don't even get me started on the language barrier. Like, I thought I'd pick up Italian by now, but nope. I barely know enough to ask for a glass of water without embarrassing myself. And don't even think about having a real conversation. I just nod and smile and hope no one asks me anything too complicated because, surprise, I have no clue what anyone's saying. It's humiliating. I feel like an idiot every single day. It's like everyone can tell I'm some clueless American who doesn't belong here. And yeah, there's this guy. Of course there's a guy. Like, my life wasn't complicated enough, right? He's cute. Okay, fine, he's really cute. But it's not like it matters. He's all Italian and perfect. And I'm just this weird foreign girl who can barely string a sentence together. He keeps giving me these looks like he's interested or something, but how is that supposed to work? I don't even know what to say to him. I tried once, and it was a complete disaster. I actually Googled how to flirt in Italian. Google? Do you even know how pathetic that is? Spoiler, it didn't help. So now every day I have to walk into school and see him, and it's like painful. He smiles at me, and I just panic and look away because what else am I supposed to do? It's not like I can actually talk to him. And don't even get me started on the rest of the school. Everyone here is so, Italian? They're all so effortlessly stylish and cool, like they just stepped out of a magazine or something. Meanwhile, I'm over here in my American clothes, sticking out like a sore thumb. I miss my friends so much it physically hurts. Back home, I had people who got me. We were all in it together, dealing with the chaos of divorced parents, life sucking, and just trying to get through it all. Here, I've got nothing. Just me, my dad, and a bunch of people who probably think I'm a joke. And don't get me wrong, I love my dad. I really do. But sometimes I just want to scream at him. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand what it's like for me. For him, this is a dream come true. He's back in Italy, living his best life, catching up with old friends and basking in the nostalgia of his childhood or whatever. And I'm stuck here, trying not to fall apart. I know he means well. He keeps telling me how great this is for us, how we're going to build a new life together and all that nonsense. But how am I supposed to build anything when I feel like everything's crumbling around me? I try to tell him how hard this is, but it's like he doesn't even hear me. He just brushes it off, says I'll adjust eventually, like it's no big deal. But it is. It's a huge deal. He has no idea what it's like to be a teenager in a foreign country where you don't know anyone and you don't understand anything. He doesn't get how much I miss my friends, my real life. He doesn't get how much I hate it here. He thinks I'm being dramatic, but this is my entire life we're talking about. I can't just snap my fingers and make it okay. And every time I bring it up, he just gives me that look. You know the one. The I'm doing the best I can look. And it makes me feel so guilty. Like, I get it. He is doing his best. But what about me? What about how I feel? I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be torn away from everything I've ever known. I didn't ask to be stuck in a country where I don't belong. I didn't ask to be abandoned by my mom, only to be dragged around by my dad. It's just not fair. Anyway, that's my life now. Trying to survive in Italy while my dad lives in his little fantasy world, pretending everything's great. And me, I'm just trying not to fall apart. Subject: school here is a nightmare, and I can't even eat pasta right. Okay, so I thought things were bad when I first got here, but I didn't know how bad they could actually get. I mean, sure, the language thing was a disaster from the beginning, but now that I've been actually going to school here for a while, it's worse. So much worse. Let me walk you through it. First of all, school in Italy is nothing like school back home. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like this weird, old-fashioned place where everything is 10 times more serious, and people actually care about grades and stuff. Like, I thought I was stressed out in the States, but here? Forget it. The teachers are intense, the kids are intense, and I'm just sitting here, barely understanding a word, pretending like I know what's going on. Spoiler alert, I do not know what's going on. Ever. It's not like I'm just bad at Italian, which I am, but even when I sort of get the gist of what people are saying, it still feels like I'm missing 90% of what's happening. There's all these inside jokes and references, and people talk so fast, and the whole thing makes me want to cry. I have to carry around this sad little dictionary app just to survive. And trust me, there is nothing more humiliating than pulling out your phone to look up words during lunch. I might as well tattoo "I don't belong here" on my forehead. And speaking of lunch, yeah, let's talk about my friends. If you can even call them that. I somehow ended up in this weird friend group, and I don't even know how it happened. Like, one minute I'm sitting alone, trying to eat this awful school sandwich that they call a panino. It's not a sandwich, it's a rock with ham in it. And the next minute, these two girls, Chiara and Sofia, sit down next to me and just start talking. In Italian. Rapid-fire Italian. And I just smile and nod like an idiot because what else am I supposed to do? Interrupt and say, "Sorry, I didn't catch any of that because I don't actually speak your language." Eventually, they realize I'm not following anything they're saying and switch to English. Sort of. Chiara's English is okay, but Sofia's is, well, let's just say she tries. I mean, I'm grateful and all, but it's still awkward. Half the time, we're sitting there in silence because they can't figure out how to say something, and I can't figure out how to respond without sounding like an actual toddler. But they've decided I'm part of their little group now, so yay, I guess. It's not like I don't appreciate the effort, but every day is this endless cycle of awkwardness. They talk about things I don't understand, and then when they do try to include me, it's always something random, like asking me what America is really like. Is it true everyone drinks coffee from a giant cup there? Or are the school lockers really like in the movies? And I just want to scream because, yes, we have coffee and yes, we have lockers, but why does that matter? It's like I'm some kind of exotic zoo animal and they're fascinated by the most basic stuff. Sometimes I wish I could just blend in, but nope, that's never happening. So a few weeks ago, they decided to invite me over for dinner at Chiara's house. I figured, okay, this is my chance to prove that I'm not a total failure at life. Maybe I can make a good impression and start to fit in a little better. Spoiler, I should have stayed home. Chiara's family is intense. Like, they're all super nice, but also intimidating. Her mom is one of those perfect Italian moms who looks like she could step out of a cooking show at any moment. And her dad barely said 2 words the whole time, but stared at me like he was trying to figure out if I was some kind of alien. It was awkward from the moment I walked in the door, and it only got worse from there. So, we sit down for dinner, and I'm already nervous because I don't know any of the proper table manners here, and everything is in Italian, and I just know I'm going to do something wrong. But of course it had to be pasta. Pasta. Like, the one food I should have been able to handle. But no, I totally screwed it up. I don't know what kind of pasta it was, some fancy kind I've never even seen before, But everyone else was eating it like they were born twirling spaghetti at 5 years old, and I was just over there, desperately trying to figure out how to get it on my fork without making a huge mess. I must have looked like an absolute disaster because Chiara's mom kept giving me this tight smile like, ah, poor American girl, can't even eat pasta. I tried to copy what everyone else was doing, but somehow I managed to send half my plate flying across the table. I'm not even exaggerating. I had pasta everywhere. On the tablecloth, on my shirt, probably in my hair. And everyone just stopped and stared at me for a second. And I thought I was gonna die. Like, just let the earth open up and swallow me whole, please. Chiara tried to laugh it off and make a joke about how Americans must eat pasta differently, but I could feel my face turning bright red, and I wanted to run out of there and never come back. Her mom gave me this pitying look as she handed me a napkin, and I swear her dad didn't blink for the entire rest of the meal. It was mortifying. I thought it couldn't get worse, but then dessert came. Guess what? More awkwardness. They brought out this huge tiramisu, and I was too embarrassed to even touch it. Like, I was convinced I'd somehow find a way to mess up eating cake. So I just sat there, pushing it around my plate while everyone else enjoyed theirs, and Chiara's mom kept asking me if I liked it, and I had to keep pretending like I wasn't about to cry. I don't know how I survived that night, but I did. Barely. Now, Chiara's been super weird with me ever since, and I can't tell if she's embarrassed by me or if she just feels bad. Either way, it's not like I'm getting invited back anytime soon. Sophia just kind of laughed about it afterward, but even she doesn't seem to know what to say to me anymore. And honestly, I don't blame her. I wouldn't want to be friends with me either if I couldn't even handle eating pasta like a normal person. So yeah, school is awful, my friends are awkward, and I'm apparently a walking embarrassment. I didn't think it was possible, but I miss my life back in the States even more now. At least there, I could eat my sad store-bought spaghetti in peace without feeling like I'm some kind of culinary failure. Why did I think I could make it here? Why did I let my dad drag me to this nightmare of a country where I can't even eat a meal without humiliating myself? Anyway, I guess this is my life now. Just me, some awkward half-friends, and a constant reminder that I don't belong here. I keep hoping things will get better, but honestly, I'm not holding my breath.
My mother left me for dead, and now years later, now that I have money, she is back and wants my help. Subject, welcome to the Hanoi Survival Guide. I commented the gist of my story on here earlier, and many said they want to hear the whole thing, so I'll try, but like I said, it's going to be long. Also, you don't have to feel bad for me, because I definitely don't anymore, so don't worry. Okay, so we're back, or rather, I'm back. You? You're just some random person on the internet, possibly doom scrolling your way through life. Don't worry, I'm right there with you. Except instead of memes, I've got my tragic comedy to share. Welcome to the show. Let's talk about my mother. You know how people say their moms are their best friends? Or their heroes? Yeah, mine wasn't. Mine was the kind of woman who made telenovelas look like mild inconveniences. She was drama personified, a storm wrapped in cheap perfume and bad decisions. It all happened when I was 5. But trust me, even at 5, some things burn into your brain like the stench of durian on a hot day. The day she left, that wasn't just some quiet exit. No, my mom didn't do quiet. She didn't just slip out in the middle of the night with a suitcase and leave a note on the table. Nah, she went for the full Vietnamese soap opera exit. She came home one day with this man. Some guy, not my dad. He looked rich. You could always tell by the way they dressed. My dad at the time was probably at the local market selling construction supplies or drinking coffee and lamenting how his life wasn't going according to plan. And here was this guy in my house, standing there with my mother like he owned the place. I don't know what 5-year-old me thought. I probably thought he was just some friend or business associate. Turns out he was her way out. I don't remember how long this was going on, but eventually she decided to stop with the whole charade and leave. But she didn't just leave. She yelled. I'm talking screaming, like one of those shouting matches that gets the whole neighborhood's attention. She told my dad that she was done. Done with the struggle, done with the poverty, done with him. She pointed at him like he was some bug that crawled in through the cracks in the wall. You think I'm going to waste my life being poor? She yelled. I'm done living in this rat hole. And my dad, he just stood there frozen like someone had taken his spine and ripped it out. Culturally, in Vietnam, family is everything. Men are supposed to be the providers, the ones who keep everything together. My dad couldn't do that. And she made sure he knew it. In front of me, in front of the man she was leaving with, in front of anyone within a 5-mile radius who could hear her. She packed her things. I watched her walk out the door with this man I didn't know, leaving me standing there next to my dad, who had all the life drained out of him. You want to know the worst part? She didn't even look back. Not at me, not at him. Nothing. I guess she figured we weren't worth the effort. We weren't part of her new life, her new plan. She left us behind like old shoes she didn't want to wear anymore. That was the last time I saw her. I was 5, but I remember the sound of her voice as she walked out the door, like an echo that never stopped bouncing around in my head. Subject: Life After the Storm, my dad's slow death. Now, if this were a movie, my dad would have had some kind of redemption arc. He would have picked himself up, focused on raising me, and maybe we'd have been okay. But that's not what happened. Instead, my dad went the other way. It wasn't immediate. He didn't collapse into a drunken mess the moment she left, but he started drinking more. At first, it was just a beer after work, then a few more after dinner, and then there was no work and no dinner, just the drinking. By the time I was 6, he wasn't my dad anymore. He was a ghost of himself, haunted by the fact that he couldn't keep his family together. Vietnamese culture puts a lot of pressure on men to be providers. If you can't provide, you're nothing. My dad couldn't provide anymore, so he just stopped trying. The construction business dried up. He stopped going to work, stopped caring. He'd sit at home all day, drunk, staring at the walls or the ceiling or whatever was in front of him. Here's the copied text as requested. Our neighbors, they didn't say much. Maybe they pitied him, or maybe they just didn't want to get involved. In Vietnam, you don't really talk about your problems. You just deal with them or you don't. But no one's going to come over and ask you if you're okay. They'd rather gossip about you behind your back. That's the cultural way. So we slipped into poverty. The kind of poverty that makes you realize just how little you have when there's no one left to help you. I was too young to understand what was happening, but I knew it wasn't good. Our house started falling apart. Bills didn't get paid. Food became this weird luxury, like something you only had if the universe was feeling generous. And my dad, he just got angrier. At himself, at the world, at me. I'll never forget the night he died. It's etched into my memory like a scar that never fully heals. He was drunk, as usual. He'd been drinking since the morning, yelling about something. I don't even remember what. Maybe it was the broken TV, maybe it was the fact that we had no money, or maybe it was just because he was angry and drunk and didn't know what else to do. He started screaming at me about how everything was my fault, about how if I hadn't been born, maybe none of this would have happened. I didn't even argue. What could I say? I was 6, standing there, taking it because that's what I did. I'd gotten used to it. And then he collapsed. At first, I didn't know what was happening. He was on the ground, clutching his chest, still screaming, but the words didn't make sense. His face turned red, then white, and then nothing. Silence. Just the sound of his breath, or what was left of it, slowing down. He was dead before I even knew what that meant. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, staring at his body, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. The neighbors came over eventually, but not because they cared. They came because they wanted to know what the yelling was about. They found him on the floor, me standing over him, and called the police. I don't remember much after that. The police took him away. Someone came to collect his things, and that was it. No funeral, no goodbyes. Just another dead man in a city that was too busy to notice. After that, I was on my own. Vietnam isn't the kind of place where people jump in to help an orphan kid. If you don't have family, well, good luck. The government, they're too busy dealing with more important things. And our culture, it's all about survival of the fittest. You don't beg for help, you make do. So that's what I did. I made do. I wandered around the streets of Hanoi, begging for food when I could, stealing when I couldn't. You think people would help a kid on the street, right? Wrong. Most people didn't even notice me. Some were annoyed, others were downright hostile. A few tossed me some coins or a bit of bread, but for the most part, I was invisible. Hanoi is beautiful in its own way. Tourists love the old quarter, with its winding streets and old French architecture. But that's not where I was. I was in the back alleys, the places tourists don't go, the places where people like me, street kids, blend into the background. There's a kind of code on the streets. You don't trust anyone, but you stick together when it's convenient. I made friends with other kids like me, orphans, runaways, kids whose parents had thrown them out because they were too much to handle. We looked out for each other, but only to a point. There was no loyalty, no trust, just survival. I took whatever I'd find. Washing dishes in the back of restaurants, sweeping streets, carrying crates at the market. The work was hard, but it paid, sort of. Most of the time, the pay was food or a place to sleep. That's just how it was. You don't argue, you don't complain, you take what you're given and hope it's enough to get you through the day. There was this one job, I was maybe 9 or 10, working for a market vendor. He sold fruit, and I was supposed to help carry the crates, keep the stall clean, like that kind of thing. He was a mean old guy, yelled a lot, hit me if I didn't move fast enough. But he paid me in bananas, so I didn't care. I figured that was as good as it was going to get. Then one day, a crate of apples went missing. I didn't steal it, but he didn't care. He accused me anyway, said I'd been sneaking food when he wasn't looking. He hit me so hard I couldn't see straight, then told me to get lost. That was it. Job gone, no explanation, no second chance. That's how it was in the streets. You worked until you didn't, until someone decided you weren't useful anymore, or you pissed them off, or they found someone cheaper. You never stayed anywhere long. You never trusted anyone. Subject, the faux shop, more yelling, less food. Eventually, I ended up working at this faux shop. I was maybe 14 by then, which made me practically a veteran at surviving. The owner was a real piece of work. Old guy, probably in his 60s, and just angry all the time. I think the only thing he loved was his foe. He hated his customers, hated his employees, and definitely hated me. He paid me next to nothing, of course. But I didn't care. I wasn't there for the money. I was there for the foe. A bowl a day, that's what he promised me. And when you're starving, a bowl of pho is better than gold. The work was brutal. I was the dishwasher, the cleaner, the delivery boy, and whatever else he needed me to be. If I screwed up, he'd hit me, same as all the others. Culturally in Vietnam, hitting your employees wasn't exactly frowned upon back then. It was just how things were. You didn't complain. You didn't fight back. You just took it. There was another guy who worked there too. Long, I think his name was. He was a few years older than me, and he was just as miserable as I was. He'd been working at the faux shop for years, and he had that same beaten-down look in his eyes that I was starting to develop. We never talked much, just did our jobs, kept our heads down, and tried not to piss off the boss. One day, Long didn't show up for work. The boss didn't ask where he was. He just found some other kid to take his place. That's how it went. One day, you're there. The next, you're gone, and no one cares. Subject, life's a massage until you get thrown out. So let's talk about one of the finer things in life. No, not money. I hadn't figured that part out yet. I'm talking about massages. If you live in Vietnam long enough, you know massages are as much a part of daily life as pho or café suada. They're cheap everywhere, and after working 12 hours straight on your feet, they feel like a blessing from the gods, or so I thought. One day, I saved up enough from all my miserable jobs to treat myself to a massage. I figured, why not? It's one of the few luxuries I could actually afford. You get a massage, you leave feeling like a human again. Seemed simple enough. I went to one of those tiny hole-in-the-wall places. Nothing fancy, just a cramped little room, an old fan humming in the corner, and a massage table that looked like it had seen better days. But hey, you get what you pay for, right? The girl who came in to do the massage, let's just say she wasn't exactly there for the professional experience. She got right to the point, no pretense. After about 5 minutes of awkward back rubs, she leaned in and asked me if I wanted more. I didn't need a translator for that one. Culturally, Vietnam's got this weird duality where traditional values clash with this underground world of hustling and survival. She was clearly in survival mode. Now, look, I wasn't exactly rolling in dong, the currency, just to clarify, but I figured, why not? I gave her a little extra. Well, that was my first mistake. Instead of, giving me what I paid for, she pocketed the cash, smiled like I was her new favorite customer, and then promptly walked out of the room. I sat there waiting, like some kind of idiot, thinking maybe she went to grab something. 5 minutes later, a different girl walked in. Same uniform, same fake smile, different face. She didn't even bother with the pretense, just started the massage like nothing had happened. I asked her where the other girl went, and all I got was a shrug and a kong bit, don't know. Right, I should have seen it coming. They tag teamed me and split the money. Classic. I tried to complain, but that didn't exactly go well. The owner, a big, grumpy woman who looked like she'd wrestled water buffalo for fun, came in all scowl and no patience. She didn't want to hear my complaints. She just wanted me out of her shop and fast. Next thing I knew, I was being physically thrown out, half naked, onto the street. And that, my friends, was the first and last time I ever tried to get a massage. Subject: jobs, where dreams go to die, and sometimes you too. But let's get back to the real story. The jobs. You'd think by now I'd have learned that trusting people was a bad idea, but no, I hadn't. I still believed that maybe, just maybe, someone would give me a break. Spoiler, they didn't. There was this one place, a market stall that sold rice. The owner was a sleazebag, a typical Ongchu boss who thought of his workers as disposable. He paid us in rice, which was fine, I guess. At least I wasn't starving. The other kids I worked with, they were in the same boat. Poor, desperate, just trying to get through the day without getting slapped or cheated. There was one kid, let's call him Kwa. We weren't friends, not really, because friends were a liability. But we worked together, and that made him the closest thing I had to a partner in crime. He was maybe a year or two older than me, though he looked about 20 years older from the exhaustion and the constant abuse we dealt with. We got through it by sharing what little we had. You split the rice, you cover each other's shifts when the boss wasn't looking, you trade stories about how miserable your life is. Real heartwarming stuff. One day, Kwa just collapsed, right there in the middle of the stall, surrounded by bags of rice. No warning, no buildup. He just hit the ground and didn't get back up. I remember the look on the boss's face. No concern, no panic, just annoyance. He didn't care that Koa was lying there unconscious, probably dying. He just cared that his worker was down. Less labor for him. Get him out of here, he said. Like Koa was a broken tool instead of a human being. No one even bothered to call for help. They just dragged him out into the alley like yesterday's trash. I don't know what happened to Koa after that. No one does. He didn't come back and no one asked about him. I guess he died. Or maybe he just wandered off like so many others before him. Either way, he was gone, and just like that, I realized something. I couldn't do this anymore. I'd spent my whole life getting kicked around, working for people who didn't care whether I lived or died. Watching Koa collapse like that made me realize something important. If I kept going the way I was, I'd end up just like him. Another nameless face on the street, another forgotten casualty in a city that didn't give a damn about me. So I decided I wasn't going to wait for someone else to give me a break. I was going to make my own. I didn't know how. I didn't have a plan, but I was done being everyone's punching bag. If I was going to die, I was going to die on my own terms. And if I was going to live, well, then I was going to find a way to make sure no one could ever treat me like that again. That's when the idea hit me. I was going to start my own business. It wasn't some grand, life-changing moment. I didn't suddenly have an epiphany and know exactly what I was going to do. I just knew I needed to stop working for people who treated me like dirt. I needed to be the one in charge, even if that meant scraping by for a while longer. But starting a business in Hanoi when you've got nothing but the shirt on your back? Yeah, that's easier said than done. I didn't have money, I didn't have connections, I didn't have any of the things you need to succeed. What I did have was a lifetime of experience in surviving. And that's worth more than any degree or fancy business plan. I started small. I found a tiny corner of the market, literally a corner, just a little space between two vendors where no one was set up. It wasn't much, but it was free. I started fixing electronics, phones, radios, whatever people brought me. I wasn't an expert, but I knew enough from working at various shops to get by. And in Vietnam, if you can fix things, people will pay you. Not a lot, but enough. At first, it was slow. I'd sit there for hours with no customers, just watching the hustle and bustle of the market around me. People haggling, vendors shouting, tourists looking lost. It was a symphony of chaos, and I was just a small, unnoticed part of it. But then, word started to spread. Someone came to me with a broken phone, and I fixed it. They told their friend, who told their friend, and before I knew it, I had a small but steady stream of customers. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me fed, enough to keep me alive. I didn't trust anyone, not after everything I'd been through. I worked alone, kept my head down, and focused on doing the job. I wasn't interested in making friends or connections. I was just trying to survive. Even though I was working for myself now, the streets weren't any kinder. If anything, they were harsher. Other vendors saw me as competition, even though I was barely making enough to get by. There were times when I'd come back to my little corner and find my tools had been stolen or my space taken by someone else. That's just how it was. Survival of the fittest. There was this one guy, let's call him Min, who sold counterfeit electronics a few stalls down from me. Min was the kind of guy who'd sell you a brand new phone for a tenth of the price and then disappear before you realized it didn't work. He had a small gang of guys working for him, and they weren't shy about using force to get what they wanted. One day, Min's guys came over to my little corner. They didn't say much, just knocked over my table, scattered my tools, and told me I needed to move along. They weren't asking, they were telling. In the nicest way possible, of course. I didn't argue. What was the point? I wasn't going to win that fight. I just packed up what was left of my stuff and found another spot. That's how it was. You either moved or you got moved. No point in getting angry about it. That was just life. But every time something like that happened, every time someone tried to push me down or steal what little I had, it just made me more determined. I wasn't going to give up. Not after everything I'd been through. I'd lost too much already. My childhood, my dignity. I wasn't going to lose this too. So I kept going, kept grinding, kept surviving. Because that's what you do when the world doesn't care about you. You find a way to make it care, or at least to make sure it doesn't forget you exist. Subject: From begging to thriving, how I went from street kid to business owner, and now my mother wants a favor. All right, so picking up from where I left off, business was slow, real slow. If you've ever sat in the middle of a busy Hanoi market for hours just waiting for a single customer to walk by and notice you, you know the kind of slow I'm talking about. I'd sit there, half covered in sweat, listening to the relentless noise of the market, watching people pass me by like I was invisible. At first, I thought I could make it just by being useful to the locals, fix their phones, TVs, radios, whatever they brought me. And sure, I had a few regulars, but the truth is, people in the market didn't want to spend much. They'd rather buy something new and cheap than fix something old. And when you're a no-name kid in a sea of other vendors, well, it's hard to stand out. So I had to think outside the box. And by box, I mean outside the typical Vietnamese customer. That's when I started noticing the tourists. Hanoi's full of them. They come in waves, swarming the old quarter, snapping photos, and getting lost in alleyways like they're in some kind of magical labyrinth. And let me tell you something. Tourists are clueless. Completely clueless. They'll pay 3 times as much for something because they don't know what it's actually worth. They don't haggle like the locals do. They just hand over their money and hope for the best. That's when I realized if I was going to survive, I had to pivot. Forget the locals. I was going to cater to tourists, especially the Westerners. And of all the tourists, the Americans were the ones who stuck out to me. Not just because they're loud, though they are, but because they have this attitude that's hard to ignore. There's this whole never give up thing they've got going on. I watch them laugh off being lost, shrug off bad meals, and just keep pushing forward. That kind of blind optimism, I didn't have it. But I figured if I could channel even a bit of that energy into my business, I might be able to make something happen. So I started learning English, slowly. painfully. At first, I barely knew enough to say hello, but I listened. I watched. I picked up phrases here and there from the tourists who came by. I'd overcharged them a bit for repairs, but they didn't mind. They just seemed relieved to find someone who could help. And over time, I got better at speaking. I stopped needing translations as much and could carry on basic conversations. I wasn't fluent by any stretch, but I was functional. And in business, functional is enough to get you by. Years passed, and I kept working with tourists. I expanded from fixing electronics to selling custom-built phones and other gadgets. I started importing parts from overseas and even dabbled in some tech consulting for tourists who were moving to Vietnam long term. My business grew, slowly at first, but eventually it started to take off. By then, I could speak English well enough that I didn't need to rely on anyone to help me. Americans in particular loved my shop. They liked that I understood them, or at least tried to. I became the go-to guy for expats and tourists alike. My little corner stall turned into a proper shop, and that shop turned into two, then three. Before I knew it, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I had employees, I had a real business. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just scraping by. I was comfortable. Subject. The day she came back. I thought my past was behind me. I had built a life, built something out of nothing. And then, one day, my past walked right through the front door of my store. I didn't recognize her face. Years had passed and she was older now, worn down by life in ways I couldn't have imagined. But I knew that voice. The second I heard it, something inside me froze. It was like hearing an old, terrible song you thought you'd forgotten, only to realize every note is burned into your brain. It was my mother. She walked in like any other customer, oblivious to the fact that the shop she was standing in was mine. She didn't recognize me, and why would she? I was just a kid the last time she saw me. To her, I was probably long gone, a chapter she closed when she walked out the door all those years ago. She was here for help, of course. What else would she be here for? The irony wasn't lost on me. After abandoning me and leaving me to fend for myself, now she was back and she needed my help. She asked to see someone who could fix her phone, not even sparing me a second glance. To her, I was just one of the employees. I played along at first, I don't know why. Maybe part of me wanted to see how far this would go. I took her phone, listened to her complain about how terrible the service was, how no one could help her, and how the least I could do was not waste her time. She snapped her fingers at me like I was a servant, not knowing that I owned the place, not knowing I had built it from nothing while she was off living whatever life she had chosen. The longer I stood there, the more I realized I couldn't keep it up. There was too much anger, too much history between us for me to just be polite, so I told her. "I'm the owner," I said, watching her face for a reaction, "and I'm your son." The look on her face? Priceless. For a second, she didn't believe me. Then, slowly, the realization dawned. Her eyes widened, her mouth dropped open, and for a brief, fleeting moment, I saw fear, or maybe guilt. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. "You?" she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "How? How am I still here?" I cut her off. "How did I survive after you walked out? You left me. You left Dad, and now you come back, expecting me to help you like nothing happened?" She stammered, trying to come up with something, some excuse, some explanation, but there wasn't one. Not really. She knew it. I knew it. There was nothing she could say to make any of it okay. I threw her out. Not physically, but I told her to leave. I wasn't the kid she abandoned anymore. I was the one in control now, and I didn't need her. I watched her leave, cursing under her breath, but before she walked out the door, she turned back. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice quieter now, almost pleading. "I didn't know." We exchanged information. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me thought I'd want to contact her one day. Maybe some part of me still felt like a son, even if I didn't want to admit it. She left, and that was that, or so I thought. Subject: now she wants help, of course. Years passed. I kept working, kept building. My business grew even more. I started hiring more staff, opening new locations. I was doing well, better than I ever imagined. Life had finally settled into something resembling normalcy. And then, out of nowhere, I got the call. It was her again. My mother. I hadn't heard from her since the day I threw her out of the shop. This time, though, she wasn't just asking for help with a broken phone. She was dying. Some illness. She didn't go into detail, but it was bad. And she needed money. She needed help. The woman who abandoned me when I was 5, the woman who never looked back, never cared what happened to me, never tried to find me until she needed something. Now she was asking for my help. She didn't even try to sugarcoat it. She just said she needed money, that she had no one else, and that I was her son, so I should help her. And here's the thing, I don't know what to do. Some part of me wants to help her, not because I forgive her, but because some cultural instinct is telling me that family is family, no matter what. In Vietnam, you're taught that blood ties are important. No matter how much someone hurts you, they're still your family. There's this unspoken rule that you don't turn your back on them, even if they turn theirs on you. But the other part of me, the part that remembers standing in that room, listening to her scream at my father, watching her walk out the door without a second thought, that part wants to tell her to go to hell. I don't know why I'm writing this. Maybe I'm hoping someone out there has the answer. Maybe I just needed to get this out because it's eating away at me. She's dying and she's asking for my help, and the only thing I can think about is how she left me to die when I was just a kid. What do I owe her? Anything? Nothing? I don't know. All I know is that for the first time in a long time, I feel like that kid again, lost, alone, and wondering what the hell I'm supposed to do now. But that's ultimately why I started writing this whole thing, since many people share their issues here. It's been a long ride, and I appreciate all the comments and feedback I received. I'm still very much torn and not sure what to do. I think I'll read over your comments again and meditate on it. Thank you.
My husband's betrayal destroyed our relationship, but years later I bond with his daughter. So, here I am, sitting in front of my computer, wondering how I got here. Honestly, if you'd told me 5 years ago that I'd be writing this post, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are, folks. The story of how I lost my marriage, my sanity, and somehow came out the other side stronger than I ever thought I'd be. Grab a coffee or a wine, depending on your mood, and let me take you back to the beginning. I thought I had it all figured out. Really, I did. I met Ryan through a mutual friend at one of those fancy holiday parties I never fit in at. You know the type. Everyone's laughing too loudly, women in dresses that cost more than my monthly rent, and me awkwardly holding a glass of sparkling water because I didn't want to seem like the girl who can't handle her champagne. Anyway, Ryan was charming in that polished way, like he just stepped out of a magazine ad for expensive watches. We hit it off. Before I knew it, we were dating, and within a year, we were married. Oh, and I should mention, Ryan came with a 7-year-old daughter, Emily. At the time, I thought it was cute. I mean, I always wanted kids. And here I was with an instant family, like one of those microwavable meals you don't have to wait too long for. Emily was with us every weekend, and things were fine. Really. It wasn't exactly the seamless fairy tale you see in Hallmark movies, but I figured we'd get there. It was early days, after all. We had time. And then Ryan's ex-wife passed away. Suddenly, Emily wasn't just a weekend guest. She moved in with us full time. Now, before anyone comes for me, I'm not heartless. I felt bad for the kid. Losing her mom at that age must have been brutal. But I'd be lying if I said I was prepared for the full-time stepmom gig. I thought I'd ease into this whole motherhood thing. Maybe have a baby of my own with Ryan in a couple of years and figure it out from there. But, nope. Life had other plans. At first, I threw myself into the role. I bought those cheesy matching aprons and tried to do all the fun stepmom stuff you see on Pinterest. We baked cookies, went to the zoo, all the things that were supposed to bring us closer. But the problem wasn't Emily. It was Ryan. He went from doting husband to full-time father of the year in about 2 seconds flat. Every conversation was about Emily. Every decision revolved around her. And my dreams of having a baby of my own? Well, let's just say Ryan shut that down real quick. He was concerned that another baby would traumatize Emily further. Traumatize her? What about me? Anyway, I tried to brush it off. I told myself it was a rough patch, that once we got used to the new normal, things would go back to the way they were. But then I noticed something else. Ryan wasn't just obsessed with Emily, he was getting a little too chummy with her teacher, Miss Johnson. Now, I'm not one to jump to conclusions, but come on. Miss Johnson was one of those women who wore pencil skirts a little too tight and lipstick a little too red for an elementary school classroom. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was my own insecurities bubbling up. Maybe I was projecting because I felt sidelined in my own marriage. But then one night, while I was making dinner, I saw the text. Can't wait for our weekend getaway. I felt my stomach drop. I stood there, staring at Ryan's phone like it was some kind of alien artifact, hoping I'd read it wrong. Weekend getaway? What the hell was this? Of course, I didn't confront him right away. No, I'm not that person. I'm the person who stews in their own paranoia for weeks, collecting little pieces of evidence like a detective in some bad TV drama. I noticed whispered phone calls late at night, emails that mysteriously disappeared from his inbox, and, oh, the kicker, an actual hotel receipt I found in his briefcase. A luxury resort, no less. The kind of place I'd begged him to take me to for years, and he always said we couldn't afford it. Turns out we could afford it, just not for me. By the time I confronted him, I was already numb. Ryan, being the genius he is, tried to play it off like it was a mistake. A mistake? Yeah, buddy, booking a hotel room with Miss Tight Skirt and red lips isn't a mistake. It's a deliberate choice. But, whatever. I didn't need to hear the excuses. I already knew what was coming next. I'm not going to bore you with the details of the divorce. We've all heard the stories. There were lawyers, mediation, paperwork, and more than a few glasses of wine consumed while crying on my best friend's couch. The hardest part wasn't even losing Ryan. It was losing the life I thought I was building, the family I thought I was going to have. But, oh, the universe wasn't done with me yet. Ryan, in all his infinite wisdom, decided to make his departure even more dramatic by telling me that Emily was his priority now. He said it like he was some kind of martyr, sacrificing our marriage for the sake of his daughter. Really? That's what you're going with? Not the fact that you've been sneaking around with Miss Johnson behind my back? Not the fact that you've systematically shut me out of every aspect of our lives for months? Sure, make it about Emily. Fine. Whatever. I let him have his story. I filed for divorce, packed my things, and got out of there as fast as I could. For a while, I felt like a shell of myself. I'd put so much into being Ryan's wife, into being Emily's stepmom, that I had no idea who I was outside of those roles. I had all these dreams of starting a family, of being a mother, and suddenly, I was childless, husbandless, and completely lost. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. You can only go up from there. After the dust settled, I started to find pieces of myself again. I reconnected with my Mexican heritage, which, honestly, I'd kind of let slip away during my marriage. I started cooking again. Real, spicy, soulful food that reminded me of my grandmother's kitchen. I found a support group for women who'd been through toxic relationships, and let me tell you, it was like someone threw me a life raft. These women had been through it all, and hearing their stories gave me the strength to rebuild my life. And then something unexpected happened. Emily, now a teenager and old enough to start seeing things for what they really were, began reaching out to me. At first, it was just little things. A text here, a call there. But soon, we were having real conversations. Turns out, Emily wasn't as oblivious to her dad's flaws as I'd thought. She'd seen the cracks in our family long before I did. And now that she was older, she wanted to understand what had happened. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her the truth, but I also made sure she knew it wasn't her fault. None of this was her fault. I wasn't expecting it, but Emily and I grew close. Closer than we'd ever been when I was her stepmom. There was something about being outside the situation, no longer trying to play the role of the perfect family, that allowed us to actually connect. She started confiding in me about school, friends, and even the pressure she felt from her dad. And I'll tell you what, being there for her, not as her stepmom, but as a woman who genuinely cared about her well-being, felt right. It felt like the motherhood I'd been chasing all along. Ryan, on the other hand, didn't fare so well. His little affair with Miss Johnson blew up in his face, as these things tend to do. Turns out, screwing around with your daughter's teacher doesn't look great, when you're a businessman trying to maintain a respectable image. He lost clients, lost his reputation, and eventually lost his business. Karma, my friends, is a powerful thing. But here's the part that still surprises me. I don't feel bitter anymore. I used to think that when Ryan's life inevitably fell apart, I'd feel some kind of vindication, some sweet satisfaction that he was getting what he deserved. But the truth is, I don't need that. I've moved on. I found a new kind of happiness, one that's not tied to whether or not my ex-husband is suffering. In fact, I met someone new. His name's Luis, and he's nothing like Ryan. He's kind, patient, and loves me for who I am, not for who he wants me to be. We've built a life together that's full of love and laughter, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Looking back, I realize I deserved better all along. My story isn't about heartbreak or betrayal anymore. It's about resilience. It's about finding myself when I thought I'd lost everything. And it's about learning that love doesn't have to come in the package you expected. It can surprise you.
My new boss is an incompetent asshole, but I'm the top chef and he pushed me too far. So, I'm a guy in the cooking industry, been at it for about 10 years now. I'm M35, single dad, and life's pretty much a juggling act between work and raising my kid. My kid, we'll call him Jay, is 7 now, and I've been doing this balancing act ever since his mom left. I never really complained because, hey, that's life, right? But man, this new boss of mine, let's just say if it wasn't for Jay, I'd have walked out by now. Let me backtrack a bit. My previous boss, we'll call him D, was an absolute gem. He was the kind of guy who knew how to run a kitchen but didn't breathe down your neck. I've worked with D for about 6 years, and we had a rhythm going. He trusted me with the kitchen, and we'd just get it done. No drama. If something went wrong, he'd come up with a solution, not a freak-out session. But last year, D decided to retire. He'd had enough of the grind, said he wanted to spend more time with his grandkids, and I respected that. What I didn't respect was who the owners decided to replace him with. We'll call this new guy R. R is around my age, maybe a couple years younger, M33, but I swear he acts like he's fresh out of culinary school, and this is his first time running a kitchen. The man is an absolute nightmare. The first day he walked in, he wanted to change everything. Fine, I get it. New boss, new vision. I can roll with that. But his vision is a mess. For starters, he's obsessed with these fusion dishes that make absolutely no sense for our restaurant. I mean, we're known for our classic French-style menu. Simple, elegant, well-executed dishes. And here comes R with his plans for sushi-inspired steak tartare with mango foam. Mango foam in a French bistro. Look, I said to him one day, trying to be diplomatic, our clientele comes here for the classics. I'm not sure they're going to be too keen on experimenting with fusion. He gave me this smirk like I was an idiot and said, "You've been doing this for how long? You're stuck in the past, man. We have to innovate." Innovate. Sure. How about we innovate by not driving away our regulars with nonsense on the menu? But that wasn't the worst of it. Not by a long shot. R doesn't just have bad ideas. He's one of those micromanagers who thinks he knows better than everyone about everything, even when he's completely clueless. He hovers. Constantly. I'll be making something I've made 1,000 times, and he'll come over and start critiquing my knife skills. My knife skills. I've been doing this for a decade, but sure, tell me again how to dice an onion. It would almost be funny if it weren't so infuriating. Like this one time, I was prepping for a dinner rush, and he stops me mid-chop and says, "You should cut the carrots into triangles. It'll look more interesting on the plate." Triangular carrots. I kid you not. But I grit my teeth and do it. Why? Because I need this job. I'm a single dad, and I can't afford to just up and leave every time someone gets under my skin. Jay depends on me. And at the end of the day, the paycheck keeps the lights on and the fridge full. So I cut the damn carrots into triangles. It's not just the ridiculous requests either. He's unpredictable. One day he'll be barking orders like a drill sergeant, and the next he'll be MIA during a lunch rush, claiming he's working on some new concept in his office. Meanwhile, the rest of us are left to scramble, covering for his absence while he dreams up the next abomination for the specials board. There was one particularly bad week where R decided we were going to overhaul the entire menu. Just like that. No notice, no planning, just a complete menu change in the middle of summer, right before our busiest weekend. I tried to talk some sense into him, told him we needed time to prepare to train the staff on the new dishes, but he wouldn't hear it. Do you want to stay stuck in the past forever? He snapped at me, like I was some kind of dinosaur for suggesting basic kitchen management principles. So we went ahead with the menu change. It was a disaster. Half the staff didn't know the dishes, the orders were piling up, and customers were pissed. I ended up staying late every night that week, cleaning up the mess, while R conveniently disappeared as soon as the dinner rush died down. By the time I got home, Jay would already be asleep, and I'd just sit there on the couch, staring at the walls, wondering how the hell I ended up here. I think what makes it worse is that I actually care about this place. I've been with the restaurant for years, built relationships with the regulars, helped train most of the staff. It's not just a job to me, it's more than that. And to see someone like R come in and run it into the ground is like watching someone set fire to something you love. There's this one regular, an older guy, M65, comes in every Thursday night with his wife. They've been coming here for as long as I can remember. Last week, he pulled me aside after his meal and said, "It's not the same, you know. The food, the vibe, it's different now. What happened?" I didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. What was I supposed to say, that the new boss is a walking disaster, that I'm doing everything I can to keep the place afloat while he sinks it with his ego and stupidity? So I just nodded and said, yeah, things have changed a bit. He gave me this sad look. He knew I was holding back and just said, "I hope it gets better." Me too, man. Me too. I keep telling myself I'm going to quit, that I'll find something else, but it's not that easy. I've got bills to pay, and there's Jay to think about. He's at that age where he's starting to understand more, starting to ask questions. I don't want him to see me as someone who gives up when things get hard. I want him to know that sometimes you have to push through, even when it sucks. I think about D a lot. Wonder what he would have done if he were still here. He would have fought back, that's for sure. D wasn't the type to let someone like R walk all over him. But then again, D didn't have a kid at home depending on him. He could afford to take risks. I guess that's the difference. When you're responsible for someone else, you don't have the luxury of throwing in the towel. You just keep going, no matter how much it grinds you down. Last week, R pulled me into his office for a chat. He starts going on about how I need to embrace change and think outside the box. The whole time I'm sitting there, nodding, trying not to lose my cool. Then he says something that nearly made me walk out right then and there. You know, if you can't adapt, maybe this isn't the right place for you anymore. I don't know what kept me in that chair. Maybe it was Jay, maybe it was just sheer stubbornness, but I didn't react. I just stared at him for a moment, then said, "I'll think about it." I left his office, went back to the kitchen, and finished my shift. And then I went home, sat on the couch again, and just stared at the walls. It's been a week since that conversation, and I'm still here. Still chopping triangular carrots, still biting my tongue, still showing up every day because I don't have a choice. But you know what? I'm done. I'm done with this place, with R, with all of it. I've been looking around, sending out resumes. They've decided it's time to make a change. I'm still here for now, but I've been putting out feelers, sending out resumes, and keeping my ear to the ground for any opportunities that might come up. Maybe I'll find a place where I can actually do what I love without someone breathing down my neck, or maybe I'll take a break from the kitchen for a bit. Who knows? I'll stick it out for a little while longer, long enough to find something better, long enough to make sure I'm not leaving Jay and me in a tough spot. But the next time R tries to pull one of his stunts, I'm walking. Because no job, no paycheck is worth this kind of stress. All right, time for an update because I'm officially done with this place. And when I say done, I mean it in the burn it all down kind of way. You know how I said I was biting my tongue with this new boss, R? Yeah, well, he pushed me too far this time, and I'm not to just sit there and take it anymore. So this morning, I walk into the kitchen like usual, ready for the daily dose of R's BS. But right away, I know something's up. The guy's pacing around like someone told him his precious fusion tacos just got banned worldwide. I barely get my jacket on before he storms up to me and starts screaming, and I mean red-faced, veins popping out of his neck, screaming about how we're losing customers. Apparently, a bunch of regulars complained about the food, saying it was bland and tasteless. Blame me, right? Like it's my fault we're down to half our usual tables. Never mind that this idiot has been messing with the menu and turning us into a joke of a restaurant. Nope. All of a sudden, it's my cooking that's the problem. My food. My speed. You're not keeping up, he says. You're slacking, and your dishes taste like nothing. Excuse me? I just stared at him, jaw clenched, while he went on and on about how we need more spice. He actually said, and I quote, "Our dishes need to pop. Add some damn flavor for God's sake, or you're out." Like, that's his brilliant solution to our dwindling customer base. More spice. Never mind the fact that half our customers are old enough to have dentures, and the last thing they want is to have their tongues set on fire during their lunch specials. Now, I could have argued. I could have told him, point blank, that it's not the seasoning that's killing our business. It's the fact that no one knows what the hell we're even trying to be anymore. But you know what? No, I'm done trying to talk sense into this clown. If he wants spice, fine. I'll give him spice. Cue my moment of malicious compliance. Lunch service comes around, and I'm on soups. You want flavor, R? You want something that'll pop? Well, buckle up, buddy, because I went full nuclear in that kitchen. I grabbed every spice jar within arm's reach. Cayenne, paprika, chili powder, crushed red pepper, curry powder, even the freaking ghost pepper flakes we kept on hand for special requests, and dumped them into the soup pot like I was making a potion from hell. I mixed and stirred until that pot of soup smelled like a fiery death trap, and I didn't stop there. Every dish that came out of my station got the same treatment. Extra cayenne on the pasta, doubled the spice rub on the chicken, even threw some extra black pepper into the mashed potatoes. The kitchen was practically a smokehouse by the time I was done, and I made sure R got a whiff of it. Service was an absolute disaster. I could see it in the servers' faces when they started bringing back half-eaten plates, eyes wide with panic as they muttered, the customers are saying the food's a little too intense? A little too intense? Ha! That's one way to describe the fiery nuclear bomb I'd set off in the kitchen. People were coughing, faces red from the heat. One old guy even asked for milk because his tongue was burning so bad. The waitstaff was scrambling to deal with the fallout, running back and forth between tables trying to calm people down. And R was fuming. He stormed into the kitchen, face as red as the chili flakes I dumped into every dish. "What the hell did you do?" he screamed, spitting his words at me like I'd just set fire to his entire restaurant. "You said to add more spice," I replied, barely holding back a grin. "So I did. Hope it pops for you." He lost it. Like, completely lost it. He was going on about how the customers were all complaining, threatening to walk out, and how this was somehow all my fault. "Again, you're sabotaging me," he yelled. "You did this on purpose." Damn right I did. But I just shrugged, wiping down the counter like I wasn't being chewed out by the world's worst boss. "Hey, I was just following your orders. You wanted more spice. I delivered." I thought he might actually explode. His fists were clenched, face purple now, and I could see the veins popping out of his forehead. He looked like he was about to have an aneurysm right there in the middle of the kitchen. "You're done here," he finally spat, his voice barely above a whisper. "Get the hell out." I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch. I took off my apron, tossed it on the counter, and walked out without a second thought. I'm not gonna lie, it felt good. All that frustration, all those nights staying late to fix his messes, all those times I bit my tongue and held back, it was like I'd finally let it all go. I'm done with this place. Done with R. And honestly, it's about damn time. I don't know where I'll go next, but wherever it is, it's got to be better than this hellhole. Hell, maybe I'll open my own place one day. A real restaurant where we don't serve up triangular carrots or soup that could burn a hole in the floor. But for now, I'm heading home to Jay, cracking open a cold beer, and maybe making something that doesn't taste like a chemical warfare experiment. So here's the last update, and man, things actually turned out way better than I expected. Yeah, I got fired after that whole spicy soup debacle. No surprise there. R couldn't handle the heat, literally, and I walked out of that place with my head held high, even if I didn't have a backup plan at the time. For a while, I was just holding on with unemployment while I searched for a new gig. Not gonna lie, it was rough. I applied to a few places, but the job market was tight and nothing seemed to be a good fit. After a couple of weeks of sitting around and thinking about how much R ruined that restaurant, I finally decided to reach out to my old boss, D. I didn't know what I was expecting. Honestly, it was more of a cry for help than anything. I shot him a quick text, something like, "Hey D, got any advice? Things went south at the old place." Didn't think I'd hear much back, but within an hour, he called me. Just hearing his voice felt like a lifeline. We ended up setting a time to grab coffee. What was supposed to be a quick catch up turned into hours of us sitting there laughing about the entire spice incident. He couldn't stop chuckling when I told him how I basically torched R's precious menu with ghost peppers. He goes, "Damn, I wish I'd been there to see his face. You really gave him what he asked for, huh?" After the laughs, things took a serious turn. D asked me what I was planning to do next, and honestly, I had no idea. That's when he hit me with the best news I've heard in months. Turns out, D had a lot of old contacts still in the business, and one of them, an old friend of his, was looking for a head chef for a new spot they were opening. He didn't make any promises, but he said he'd make a call. 2 days later, I get an email from this guy. Let's call him B. We set up a meeting, and to make a long story short, I'm now working at his restaurant. It's a completely different vibe, small, tight knit, the kind of place where they actually appreciate experience. They were thrilled to have someone like me on board. Get this, the pay is almost doubled from what I was making before. No joke, I'm making way more than I ever did under R's miserable reign. It's been a couple of weeks now, and I actually enjoy going to work again. The kitchen runs smooth, the team knows what they're doing, and there's no one breathing down my neck about triangular carrots or mango foam. I guess sometimes things just fall apart so better things can fall into place, right? I'm still laughing about how that spice fiasco ended up being the best thing to ever happen to me. And the best part, I never have to see R's face again.
My boyfriend keeps naked pictures of his ex-wife, and I don't know how to put up with it. Okay, so I need to vent about something that's been eating me alive. Like, I didn't think I'd ever be that person, but here I am losing my mind over some freaking photos. So, I've been with my boyfriend for about a year and a half now. Things are mostly good. He's got 2 kids from his previous marriage, and honestly, they're great. I'm not here to complain about the kids. No, what's driving me insane is his damn shrine to his ex-wife. Yes, you heard me right, a shrine. Okay, maybe it's not officially labeled as a shrine, but the man has a shelf that's basically a memorial to his marriage, and I'm about one bad day away from taking a baseball bat to it. Now, I get it. They were married for like 20 years. And yeah, that's a long time to be with someone. I'm not a monster. Not a monster. I'm not saying erase the past. He's got kids with her, for crying out loud. I'm all for keeping some family photos so the kids don't forget their mom or whatever. But why the hell are there romantic photos of them, right out in the open? Like full-on, coupley, hand-holding, cheesy beach vacation photos. And, wait for it, nude photos. Yeah, I found an actual nude photo shoot of her in his office, tucked between a pile of random crap. Like, seriously? Who just leaves naked photos of their ex lying around? Oh, and it's not like they're hidden away in some dusty corner. No. These photos are sitting on the shelf, front and center, staring at me, every damn time I sit on the couch. I swear, they mock me. Every time I walk by, I'm like, hey, don't mind me, just living in the shadow of your sexy beach vacation with your ex-wife. So here I am, sitting on the couch one night, the kids are asleep, I'm sipping my tea, and all I can think about is those damn photos. I start spiraling. Am I crazy for being pissed about this? Would anyone else just shrug and be like, oh, that's totally fine, honey, keep those naked pics of your ex right where we all can see them? Like, no. Imagine if I had nude photos of my exes just chilling on the shelf. Would he be cool with that? Hell no. he'd lose his mind. But somehow I'm supposed to be understanding because it's his past. I can almost hear the BS excuses already. Oh, it's just part of my life, or I don't even notice them anymore. Yeah, well, I notice them. Every damn day. So after staring at the shelf for what feels like hours, I'm like, screw it. I have to say something. But how? How do you even bring up something like that without sounding like the crazy jealous girlfriend? I mean, I'm not insecure, okay? I know I'm amazing. But no one should have to live with a constant reminder of their partner's ex naked in their house. I start planning out how this conversation is going to go in my head. Hey, babe, love you and all, but those naked pictures of your ex-wife? Yeah, they're really killing the vibe in here. And then I picture him being all defensive, like, but it's part of my past. It's not a big deal. Ugh. Like, how do I not scream at that point? So now I'm stuck in this loop, trying to figure out how to talk to him about it without coming across as a total psycho. Because on one hand, I get it, 20 years is a long time. But also, enough is enough. You're with me now, not her. Why are those pictures still around, you know? And the worst part? I haven't even brought it up yet. Every time I think about saying something, I chicken out. I mean, what if he gets all weird and accuses me of being controlling or something? I don't want to be that girl. But at the same time, I refuse to just keep ignoring it like it's not bothering me, because it is bothering me, and I'm about to snap. I keep telling myself that it's a conversation I need to have. Like, I need to put my big girl pants on and just say it. But the anxiety is real, y'all. This isn't just a move the couch conversation. This is me, confronting the fact that my boyfriend is still hanging on to some weird romantic connection to his ex, and I'm supposed to act like it's no big deal. I know I have to say something. I know it's going to be awkward and uncomfortable as hell, but I can't keep pretending I don't see those pictures every time I sit down. Wish me luck. I'm going in. And honestly, I'm prepared for things to get messy. But if I see him even hesitate, if I get even the slightest bit of resistance, those photos are going in the trash faster than you can say, bitter ex-wife. I'll keep y'all updated. All right, y'all, I'm back with an update, and it's a wild one. So buckle up because things took a real twist. So, after I posted here, I finally grew a pair and decided to have the talk with him. You know, the whole thing about the photos of his ex-wife. I figured, if I don't say something now, I'm going to explode one day and end up doing something drastic, like setting the shelf on fire. Anyway, I waited until the kids were asleep, poured myself a glass of wine, for courage, obviously, and just went for it. I was like, babe, we need to talk. I love you and the life we're building, but these pictures of your ex, they're making me feel like I'm competing with a ghost here. I was fully expecting him to get all defensive or to tell me I'm overreacting, but to my surprise, he didn't. Instead, he got really quiet. Like, eerily quiet. Then, out of nowhere, this man starts crying. And I'm not talking about like a tear or two, I'm talking full-on sobbing. Now, I'm sitting there like, what is happening right now? Turns out, he's been carrying all this emotional baggage about his past marriage, and he says the photos are just there because, well, she was part of his life for 2 decades. He swears up and down that he doesn't even notice the photos anymore, that it's not like he's holding on to her in some romantic way. It's just there. He kept saying how he understands where I'm coming from, how he knows it must be hard for me, but that getting rid of them feels like erasing a part of his life that's still connected to his kids. And then I start feeling like a complete asshole. Like, great, I've now reduced my boyfriend to a blubbering mess over some photos. As we're sitting there, mid-heartfelt conversation, guess what happens? The kids hear us. They come wandering into the living room, all sleepy and confused, like, why are you guys crying? And I'm just sitting there with guilt oozing out of every pore, because not only am I the one that started this mess, but now I've dragged the kids into it too. Fantastic. So, of course, I backtrack a bit. I'm like, it's okay, we're just talking, everything's fine. And I tell him, I'm sorry for bringing it up like this, and I get it, I really do. I don't want to be the person that tries to delete someone's past. We hugged it out, and I thought we were good. Like, we had this huge emotional moment, the air was cleared, and we could move on. But then, fast forward to last night. It's the middle of the night, and I wake up because the bed feels empty. I reach over, and he's not there. Now, I'm thinking maybe he's in the bathroom or getting a drink, no big deal. But then 10 minutes go by, and he's still not back. So, of course, my curiosity and maybe paranoia gets the best of me. I get up and start looking for him. I check the kitchen. Nothing. The bathroom? Nope. Finally, I peek into his office, and there he is. And let me just say, I wish I hadn't looked. This man, this man is sitting there, fully naked, with one of those photos of his ex-wife, one of the nude ones, mind you, and well, you get it. I'll spare you the gritty details, but yeah, he's fully going to town on himself. To a picture of her. I just stood there, frozen, like, what the actual fuck is happening right now? I quietly backed away before he could see me, and now I'm just lost. I don't even know what to do with this information. After all that emotional crying and understanding, here we are. Now I'm just sitting here, writing this, wondering if I'm supposed to bring it up again, because, honestly, I'm not sure if I can look at him the same way anymore. Like, was I wrong to feel weird about those photos after all? Clearly, there's more going on here than just memories for the kids.
After moving high schools, my new friends invite me to do a dangerous prank with them that goes horribly wrong. So, IF16 just moved to this new school like a month ago, and honestly, it's been weird AF. I didn't even want to move, but my dad got a new job in this tiny town where there's literally nothing to do. My old school was in a city, and I had friends, decent grades, and like an actual life. But my parents decided fresh start or whatever, and now I'm stuck here in this high school that's way too small, and I'm the new kid again. Yay. At my old place, it wasn't perfect or anything, but at least I knew where I stood, you know? I had a solid group, we'd watch K-dramas and talk about how dreamy the guys were, and honestly, that was kind of my thing. I'm super into those shows, but I don't exactly advertise that here because, well, no one would get it. The people I've met so far are the opposite. They're loud, like loud, loud, and all they care about is who's dating who hooked up with who at the last party, and all that drama. It's exhausting trying to keep up. But I guess I'm doing an okay job pretending like I care because I somehow managed to make a few friends. I say friends, but it's more like survival. The first day of school, I was eating alone, right? Classic new kid moment, trying not to look like a total loser. Then this girl comes up to me and asks if I want to sit with them. I said yes, obviously, because sitting alone in the cafeteria is basically social suicide. But ever since then, it's been different. They're all so confident, talking about all the stuff they've done, who they're dating, sneaking out to parties and stuff. Meanwhile, I'm just nodding along, throwing in a laugh or two, pretending like I'm not totally out of my depth. I mean, I try to fit in, but I'm so not that person. They talk about going to this party last weekend, and I'm sitting there thinking, cool, I was at home binge watching Crash Landing on You for the third time. But whatever. I guess that's just how it is now. Fake it till you make it, right? Home life isn't any better. My mom's like super stressed because of the move, and my dad's always at work. They think I'm adjusting just fine because I don't really talk about it, but the truth is, I miss my old friends like crazy. I haven't even told them about the prank yet because, well, I'm not sure how to explain it without sounding like a total idiot. So yeah, here's where things get a little messy. These new friends I made, they're really into doing these wild pranks, like the kind of stuff that could get you suspended if you get caught. I wasn't super into it at first, but again, I'm just trying to fit in, so when they asked if I wanted to hang out after school one day, I said yes. I figured we'd just go to someone's house, gossip a bit, whatever. But nah, they had bigger plans. Update. So I almost died because of a prank. Great friends, right? Okay, so where did I leave off? Oh yeah, the part where I thought we were just gonna hang out and gossip or whatever. Nah, they had plans. And when I say plans, I mean borderline illegal shot that could have gotten us all in serious trouble. I wish I could say I was surprised, but at this point, nothing really surprises me with these people. let me introduce the cast of characters a bit better, because you need to know who these people are before I tell you how my life nearly ended in the most ridiculous way possible. There's Sarah, not her real name, obviously, the leader of this whole thing. She's one of those girls who never actually gets in trouble because she can talk her way out of anything. Super pretty, always looks like she just stepped out of a TikTok, but with a side of terrifying. She's the one who comes up with most of the pranks. Then there's Lexi, who's nice enough but definitely has no chill. She talks so fast, I'm not even sure she knows what she's saying half the time. And finally, there's Michael. He's that funny, super extra gay guy every group seems to have, except he's like aggressively mean in a funny way. He'll tell you your hair looks like shit while laughing so hard that you can't even get mad because he's kind of right. Yeah, that guy. So the plan that day was to prank the school's old gym coach, who everyone says sleeps in his office because he's basically never home. The prank? We were going to throw a bunch of stink bombs into his office after hours because I don't even know why. Seemed funny at the time, I guess. Now, here's the thing. I thought we were just going to chuck a few stink bombs and run. Classic, harmless fun, right? Wrong. First of all, we had to break into the school. Yeah, apparently, Sarah thought it'd be a fun challenge to see if we could sneak in without setting off any alarms. Spoiler alert, she was wrong about the alarms. Anyway, we climb over the fence. Well, they climbed. I mostly flopped over like a fish out of water, and made our way to the side entrance, where Sarah totally knows how to pick the lock because she saw it on YouTube. It took like 20 minutes of her fumbling with a hairpin while Lexi kept giggling and Michael roasted Sarah's existence. Girl, if you were any slower, we'd be breaking in for our 30-year reunion, Michael said, rolling his eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Finally, she gets the door open, and we're in. Now, the plan was simple. Sneak to the coach's office, throw in the stink bombs, and GTFO. But of course, because this is my life, nothing went as planned. We get to the coach's office, and Lexi, being Lexi, starts getting all loud and giggly because apparently breaking into a school at night is the funniest thing ever. I'm trying to shush her, but then I trip over a random chair and crash to the floor. The noise was so loud, it might as well have been a damn firework going off. I swear, my life flashed before my eyes right then and there. That's when the chaos began. In the panic of, oh crap, we're about to get caught, Sarah throws the stink bombs without even aiming, so one of them hits the wall and bounces right back at us. The other one? I have no idea where that one even went because I was too busy trying to not die. Here's the best part. As we're all scrambling to get out, I trip. Again, this time over the edge of a freaking desk. My ankle twists in a way it definitely wasn't supposed to, and the next thing I know, I'm on the floor in so much pain. I hear Sarah yell, "Leave her," as if we're in some kind of zombie apocalypse. Michael's standing over me, hands on his hips, shaking his head like I'm the biggest inconvenience ever. Girl, really? Right now? You had to go and break your leg? I don't know. Maybe try not being useless next time, Michael said as they all rushed past me toward the door. Wow. Love the support, y'all. So there I am, lying on the floor in the middle of the school, ankle throbbing, thinking this is how it ends for me. But then, of course, the alarms finally go off. We hear the sirens outside, and instead of helping me, what do my friends do? They freaking run. Don't say we were here. Sarah yells as they bolt out the door like a bunch of cowards, and I'm just there, in pain, bleeding, left for dead. Nice. The police show up, and I'm trying to get it together, but I'm in so much pain, and my brain's just a scrambled mess at this point. So when the cop asks me what happened, I just blurt out everything. Like, everything. I didn't even try to cover for them. My brain was like, oh, don't tell anyone. Cool, let me immediately do the exact opposite. So yeah, I'm probably going to be known as the snitch now, but whatever. I'll deal with that later. At least I didn't actually die. Update 2. Turns out breaking your leg sucks. And so do my friends. All right, so after I spilled my guts to the cops like an absolute genius, things went downhill real fast. Let's start with my parents. Because, oh boy, were they thrilled about the whole, your daughter nearly died pulling a prank at school situation. I'm lying there in the hospital with a leg that feels like it's been crushed by a truck, and my mom is doing the classic, I'm not mad, just disappointed thing, while my dad looks like he's about to burst a blood vessel. We spent hours at the hospital. First, they had to make sure my leg wasn't shattered, just badly sprained. Which, let me tell you, doesn't sound like much, but when you're lying there and your leg feels like it's on fire, it's not exactly a party. They had me on pain meds that made me feel like I was floating in some kind of weird, half-conscious state, which honestly wasn't too bad compared to the pain. But of course, the meds wore off eventually, and reality hit like a sledgehammer. I'm in a cast now, hobbling around on crutches, which is just awesome for my whole trying to fit in and not be a total loser plan. I can't even bend my leg properly without it throbbing, and every time I move, I feel like I'm gonna puke from the pain. The doctors gave me these painkillers that basically turn my brain to mush, but without them, I'm pretty sure I'd just scream nonstop. And then there's the fallout. My parents grounded me for, well, forever, probably. They couldn't stop lecturing me the whole time we were in the hospital. My mom went on about how she raised me better than this, and how this is why you need to choose your friends wisely. Yeah, okay, Mom. Like I have a ton of options here in the middle of nowhere. My dad just kept shaking his head like I'd ruined his entire legacy or something. The worst part? When we got home, they made me watch some documentary about how dangerous pranks can be. I wish I were joking. They're sitting there, staring at me like I'm gonna run out and do it all again while I'm just trying to stay awake because the meds make me want to pass out. But here's the kicker. After I got back to school, I found out who my real friends are. Spoiler, it's not Sarah and Michael. The first day back, I'm limping into school, trying not to make a big deal out of it, and Sarah comes up to me all fake nice like, "Hey, how's your leg?" with that smile that makes you want to punch her. I figured maybe she felt bad about ditching me that night, but nah, that was just the warm-up. By the next day it started. First, it was little comments. "Oh, careful, don't trip again," or "Try not to break any more bones, klutz." Michael, being his usual charming self, chimed in with, "Sweetie, maybe you should wrap yourself in bubble wrap next time. You know, for safety." He laughed so hard at his own joke, I thought he was gonna choke. I just rolled my eyes because whatever, right? It was annoying, but I could handle it. Except it didn't stop. It got worse. A lot worse. By day 3, they weren't even pretending to be nice about it. Michael started calling me Crutches like it was my new name. And Sarah, she's a mastermind. She's the kind of person who knows exactly what to say to make you feel like garbage. She started dropping comments about how I couldn't keep up or didn't belong with them. One day in the cafeteria, she accidentally spilled her drink all over my crutches. Then Michael, with his perfect timing, said, "Oops, guess you're gonna need a mop too. Poor thing." Cue the laughter. Lexi, well, at first she laughed along with them. I guess it was easier than standing up to them. I don't blame her, really. I mean, I was barely holding it together. And she's not exactly known for being the brave type. But after a while, even she started to get uncomfortable. The worst moment? That was last week. I was at my locker, trying to get my books without falling over because, crutches. And Sarah comes up behind me with Michael. She taps me on the shoulder, all sweet, and says, "Oh, here, let me help you," before slamming my locker door into my crutches, knocking me down. Michael, of course, thought this was the funniest thing ever and starts laughing so loud, I'm surprised the whole school didn't hear him. That's when I lost it. I couldn't take it anymore. I limped off to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and just broke down. I sat there, sobbing, feeling like the biggest idiot for letting them get to me. I don't know how long I was in there, but eventually Lexi came in. She didn't say anything at first, just sat down next to me, leaning against the stall door and sighed. Then, really quietly, she said, "I'm sorry. I didn't think it would get this bad." I didn't know what to say, so I just kept crying. She didn't leave, though. She stayed with me until I finally stopped, and then she helped me clean up, like nothing ever happened. She hasn't stood up to Sarah or Michael yet, but at least she's not laughing anymore. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now, bullied by my friends, stuck on crutches for who knows how long, and popping painkillers like they're candy just to get through the day. High school is great, right? Okay, So people have been asking for an update, and I wish there was one to give, but I guess the biggest update is that things have sort of quieted down. Sarah and Michael have more or less stopped bullying me, choosing instead to ignore my existence, and Lexi became a close friend. I realized I judged her a bit harshly in the beginning, and she is much lot nicer than I realized. She told me about how Sarah and Michael used to bully her too, but eventually accepted her as a part of the group, but that never really sat well with her. We talk to other people too, OFC, but me and her talk every day. The one thing that bothers me, now that things have calmed down, is why Sarah and Michael stopped bullying me, and what was the fallout with the police. Neither the school, nor the police, nor my parents addressed this with me. I haven't been arrested or suspended, and I don't know why. It feels a lot nicer not knowing, to be honest. Maybe they are just being nicer because of my injury, but I don't know. There's probably background stuff going on that I don't know about, but as it is, I'm fine not knowing. Thank you for all the comments, even the hateful ones, lol. You guys made me laugh and made my life a little better just by listening. If a big update does happen, I'll come back and let you know. But that's all for now.
My husband of 20 years suddenly went to Turkey during the pandemic, so I checked his phone and was shocked by what I found. I don't even know how to start this because honestly, I feel like I'm losing my damn mind trying to make sense of it all. So here's the thing. I met Jason when I was just 19. I was young, so freaking young, living on Sakhalin, this tiny island in Russia if you've never heard of it, minding my own business, going to school, just doing life. Then Jason comes along, stationed there for work, and God, I thought he was the best thing to ever happen to me. We got married, like really quick, maybe too quick, but you know how it is when you're young and in love. You don't think straight. He was this American guy, so smart with that charm that just knocks you over. I didn't stand a chance. We moved to the States and life started, like it was a fairy tale for a while. I became an accountant. Jason was working as an engineer. We had a nice house, 2 cars, all that. We were doing great, or at least I thought so. Then I got pregnant with Maddie, and man, I was scared as hell. I didn't know what to expect, but Jason was over the moon. He couldn't stop talking about being a dad, all these plans he had for the future with the kids. It was kind of adorable, you know? Like we're in this together, figuring it out. When Maddie was born, everything changed. I mean, everything. It was the hardest but also the best time of our lives. Sleepless nights, diapers everywhere, baby bottles, toys. It was chaos. But Jason was such a hands-on dad. He loved that kid to pieces. He'd come home from work, and the first thing he'd do is scoop her up, make all these ridiculous faces at her until she'd start laughing. And man, watching that, it made me fall in love with him all over again. Then came Zoe, and it was the same story. I thought, wow, we really have it all. Maddie was around 3 when Zoe was born, and watching them grow up together, those were some of the best years. Jason would take them to the park every weekend, no matter what. I remember one time, Maddie fell off the swing and scraped her knee, and Jason just swooped in, calmed her down like it was nothing. He was their hero. They'd play hide and seek for hours, Jason chasing them around the house until they were all breathless from laughing. I swear, looking back now, remembering all that makes what happened even worse. Like, how could he do this to us after all that? But here's the thing nobody tells you about marriage. After 20 years, you realize you don't really know someone as well as you think you do. There were fights, sure. God, we fought. Stupid stuff like leaving dishes in the sink, who was going to pick up the kids, money stress, normal married people crap. But we always made up. Like, no matter what. At the end of the day, I knew he loved me and I loved him. Or at least, I thought I did. I thought we had something solid. You know, I trusted him with everything. 20 goddamn years and then this. So COVID hit and everything went downhill. I'm still working at the hospital as an accountant and Jason's home, working remotely. I thought, well, maybe this is good, more time with the girls, more time together. But nah, he started acting all sketchy, glued to his computer, closing the screen every time I walked by. And I thought, what the hell? But I let it go. Maybe he's just stressed, right? People were losing their jobs, the world was going to hell, it made sense. Then he drops this bomb on me, saying he has to go to Turkey for work during a pandemic. Turkey. Are you freaking kidding me? I was mad, but I didn't say anything because he's traveled for work before, so I figured it was just another trip. But then Zoe got sick, and I texted him, telling him she might need to go to the hospital, and he replies with, "You're already there, and that's enough." What kind of father says that? Right then, I knew something was up. My stomach just dropped. So I checked his iPad. I never did that before. Never thought I'd be the type to go snooping. But there was this gut feeling like something wasn't right. And guess what? I was right. I find all these messages. He's been talking to these Russian girls like he's single, telling them he's looking for a wife, buying plane tickets to meet them in Turkey. I don't even know how I held it together when I saw all that. 3 of them. He bought 3 separate tickets, planning to meet each of them. One of them already met him. Jesus Christ. I don't even know how long I sat on the floor crying, just trying to make sense of it all. How does someone do that after 20 years? How does someone lie to your face for months and act like everything's fine? I was shaking, couldn't even breathe, couldn't move. Just staring at the screen, reading those messages over and over. When he got back, he tried to explain it away, said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness, that he had a porn addiction. I wanted to punch him in the face. He begged me to forgive him, said he still loved me, but I couldn't. How the hell do you come back from that? After everything we built together all those years, how do you look at someone the same way again? We tried to make it work for the girls. We went to therapy, talked it out. He promised he'd change, but it was too late. The damage was done. And eventually, he moved out. But it's not just about me. The girls, Maddie and Zoe, they've been through hell because of this. Maddie, she's tough. She's always been the strong one. Acts like it doesn't bother her, but I know it does. She's 17 now, almost an adult, but she still needs her dad. She doesn't talk about him much anymore. Tries to keep things light, making jokes like she always does. But I can see it in her eyes. She's hurt and she's pissed. But Zoe's 14 now, and she took it the hardest. She was always Jason's little shadow, always by his side. She adored him. They'd go fishing together, just the 2 of them, and he'd teach her everything about tying knots and baiting hooks. I think she loved those moments more than anything in the world. Now she barely talks. She used to be this bubbly, outgoing kid, always smiling, always laughing. Now, she's quiet, withdrawn. She won't even look at me sometimes, like she blames me for what happened. And maybe she does. Maybe she thinks I should have done something to stop it. But how could I? I didn't know. I hear her crying at night. She tries to hide it, but I can hear her through the walls. She's so heartbroken, and there's nothing I can do to fix it. Nothing. How do you fix something like that?
My wife left with her guy friends on a vacation I planned for us, so I dumped her. Years later, she is back with a child and wants to get back together. I've been having a bunch of shit going on in my life over the last couple of years, and I wanted to share my experiences with someone outside of immediate family, or I feel like I'll go crazy. Let's call me Ethan, and I'm probably your average dude. I'm in my 30s, a little rough around the edges, but I try to be a good guy, I think. I work in software development, not exactly the most glamorous gig, I know, but it pays well enough, and I enjoy the problem solving. My wife, Lydia, she's in marketing, one of those social media coordinators who somehow always looks perfect in every photo. We met at this corporate networking event that I almost skipped because I'm not the mingle with strangers type, but there was free food, and at the time I was really into free food. I remember she walked up to me holding a glass of wine, laughing at something I can't even remember now, and we just clicked. We dated for a couple of years, and it was a good time, mostly because we were still doing that whole everything's new and exciting phase, you know? Then we got married, and it was great, at least for the most part. I'd say we've had our ups and downs like any couple, but I think we balance each other out. I'm the chill guy who'd rather stay home. She's the social butterfly who somehow knows everyone everywhere. She even knows the people at our local coffee shop by name, and I'm not sure if I should be impressed or concerned. So, forward a bit, and we've been married 3 years, and life's been pretty stable. Things at work started picking up, and I landed a couple of major clients. I decided, hey, I've been busting my butt, and Lydia is always talking about, wanting to travel more, so why not take a trip? And not just any trip, but a whole vacation to the Bahamas. I figured we could use the time away from everything and just, reconnect, do that whole couple thing. And let's be real, I was looking forward to spending some time with just her, no distractions, no work calls, just sun, beach, and maybe a fancy drink with one of those little umbrellas. So I save up for a few months, book a beautiful house on the beach. It's got one of those infinity pools and everything. I'm talking paradise, okay? Um, I even checked the photos twice. Like, is this for real? Anyway, I finally tell Lydia about it, and she's thrilled, or at least I thought she was. She asks if it's just the two of us, and I go, yeah, that's the plan. I'm thinking maybe she's just confirming because, sometimes plans change. Then she goes, well, do you mind if a couple of my friends come? If they pay for their own flights, of course. Now, I didn't really know what to say to that. I mean, I just planned this whole trip for the two of us, but I figured, okay, maybe she's just excited and wants to share it. Plus, she said, a couple of friends. So I'm picturing maybe her best friend Sarah and her boyfriend or something. And honestly, I'm not too worried. I tell her it's cool as long as they cover their costs because I wasn't planning to foot the bill for extras. She's all smiles, saying thanks, and that she'll let them know. I figured, all right, it's fine. And if it's a couple of extra people, yeah, how bad could it be? Well, folks, buckle up because here's where the fun begins. I find out a few days later that the friends she invited are actually two guys and a girl, none of whom I really know. I've met them once or twice in passing, but they're more her work friends than ours? So now it's feeling a little like some random college road trip, but I try to roll with it. I even tell myself, Ethan, you're just being uptight. Don't be so insecure. Go with the flow. Maybe these people will be cool. It was eating away at me, but I did my best to let it go, which looking back at it now was a big mistake. Maybe I should have been more outspoken, but whatever. What's done is done. So the day of the trip comes around. I'm at work and I leave early, all packed and ready to go. We were supposed to meet at the airport, catch our flight, and be sipping cocktails on the beach by sunset. I'm texting her as I get there, asking where she's at, and all of a sudden I get a reply that says, oh, I already left with the others. We're at the house now. See you Monday. Love you. And I just stop. I'm standing there at the airport with my suitcase in hand, reading this text, and it's like my brain can't process what she just said. So I text her back, something like, wait, what? I thought this trip was for us? And she goes, oh, I thought you said I could spend it with my friends. I didn't think you'd mind. Didn't think I'd mind? I planned this whole thing. I thought it was supposed to be some kind of romantic getaway, not some girls and two random guys that I don't even fucking know kind of trip. She even had the nerve to say, you can join if you want, but we don't really have any rooms left, and it's kind of cramped. You know that moment when your entire perspective on something just shifts? That was me, standing in the middle of the airport, realizing that my wife had essentially hijacked our vacation and left me out of it. So I just kind of stood there for a bit, thinking about how I could have been anywhere else but right there, waiting for a plane that apparently no longer mattered. I could feel the rage bubbling up, but mostly I just felt this wave of disbelief. I mean, who does that? So I take a deep breath, I cancel my ticket, and I go back home. I spend the weekend just chilling, honestly. It was weirdly nice to have the house to myself, almost like I was a bachelor again. I caught up on some shows, ordered in some food, and basically just did all the stuff I probably wouldn't do if she were home. But as I'm sitting there, I start getting this idea. It's nothing crazy, but I'm thinking to myself, what if I take that refund from the plane ticket, maybe add a little extra and plan a new trip? But this time, I'll make sure it's something I actually want to do. No plus ones, no tag-alongs. Just me in the open road, maybe rent a motorcycle or something, and just go wherever the hell I want. Both Lydia and I got extra time off work for this vacation, so I might as well spend it. So I'm back home after she ditched me for that Bahamas trip, and I'm thinking, screw it. I'm not sitting here all this time. I call up a couple of my old buddies, Matt and Dave. We used to be tight back in the day, and we haven't hung out in forever. Luckily, they're both free. Dave works online, and Matt's boss let him take a couple of days off. And the next thing I know, we're loading up Matt's beat up old truck and pointing it south. Destination, Miami. Why Miami? I don't know, it just felt right and not crazy far. Sun, beaches, good food, and a whole lot of trouble to get into if we play our cards right. The drive down there was a trip in itself. Matt's truck barely has AC and it smells vaguely of gas and old French fries, but none of us care. We're just laughing, reminiscing about old times, and blasting music so loud that I'm sure I'll need hearing aids by the time I'm 50. Lol. We stop at every sketchy roadside diner we can find, and by the time we hit Miami, we're all wired on terrible coffee and heartburn from greasy burgers. But we made it. The first night in Miami, we find this little dive bar right near the beach. It's one of those places with dollar beers and neon lights that flicker, and it's perfect. We grab a table and we're just talking, soaking in the vibe. Dave, always the ladies' man, is already eyeing a couple of girls at the bar, but I'm just here to kick back. We all get way too many drinks, and I swear it feels like being 22 again. I'm laughing so hard my stomach hurts, and I can't even remember the last time I felt this relaxed. We hit up the beach the next day, and I finally feel like I'm on vacation, which is ironic considering this wasn't even the plan. We're out there in the sun, messing around like idiots, and Matt's trying to teach himself how to surf. He was terrible. But we're all laughing watching him try to balance on a board while drunk, and I'm thinking, this, right here, this is what I needed. No stress, no drama, just good times with friends. By the third day, we're practically locals at this little Cuban cafe we found. They've got these sandwiches the size of my head and coffee strong enough to jumpstart a car. I'm not even sure how much time has passed because, honestly, it's just a blur of beach days, late night beers, and a lot of joking around. I'm loving every second of it, not a thought spared for what's going on back home. So Sunday rolls around and we're about to head back. I check my phone for the first time in days, and there's this flood of texts and missed calls from Lydia. I scroll through them, and it's like a mix of, where the hell are you, and are you okay? And then, of course, a healthy dose of accusations. I finally call her back, and the first thing she does is lay into me asking where I am, and I'm like, well, Miami, since you didn't seem to need me in the Bahamas. That really sets her off. She starts throwing around all kinds of accusations, saying, oh, so you're out there cheating on me now? And I'm just sitting there, completely baffled, like, whoa, hold up. I tell her I've just been hanging out with the guys, but she's not hearing it. She's getting worked up, and I can tell this is going to be one of those arguments that doesn't end well. Then out of nowhere, she drops this bomb. She goes, well, whatever. We had a crazy time at the Bahamas anyway, and I slept with both those guys. That's exactly what your cheating ass deserves. The gaslighting is absolutely unbelievable. I'm just standing there, the phone pressed to my ear, and it's like the world goes quiet. I don't even know what to say. There's a part of me that wants to yell, to lose it completely, but another part of me just feels numb. Like, really? After all that, this is how it ends? I think a part of me already knew, but was just struggling with the reality. She's just always been social. It's not hard to imagine that she's been cheating on me ever since we met every now and then. That would explain how she could be so casually brazen now. I mean, that's... So I just tell her, good to know, and hang up. So after that conversation with Lydia, I just sat there for a while, letting it all sink in. I felt like I've been kicked in the gut, and for a moment, I don't even know if I can stand up. When I finally pull myself together, I head back to the table where Matt and Dave are, and they can tell something's up right away. I give them the rundown, the whole mess, and they're both just sitting there, jaws dropped. Matt finally slaps his hand on the table and says, man, that's messed up. What a total bitch. What do you want to do? Dave gave me the quiet, you didn't deserve that, man. Before I know it, they're ordering rounds of shots and we're all throwing them back, one after the other. Dave's trying to cheer me up, cracking jokes about how I dodged a bullet and how I'm free to hit the Miami scene like a single guy again. There's this girl across the bar who keeps glancing over at me, and Dave leans in and says, "Look, man, you could end this night with her if you want. She's been eyeing you since we walked in." I glance over and yeah, she's cute, and there's definitely a part of me that considers it just to get back at Lydia. But that's not me. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to hook up with some random girl just to prove a point. It wouldn't make me feel better, it'd just make things messier. So I shake my head and I tell the guys I've got a different plan in mind. I'm done with her games and I want out of this marriage, but I'm not going down without making it clear that I'm not someone to be messed with. We spend the rest of the night throwing around ideas, but ultimately, at the time, it lead to nothing, which isn't surprising considering how wasted we all got, lol. So after that wild Miami weekend, I get back home, only to realize I've missed an entire day of work. I wasn't too worried, though. My boss, Jim, is a solid guy. I gave him a call, explained the situation, left out a few of the finer details, and he just laughed. He even asked if I was all right and told me to take care of myself. Honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better boss. He's the kind of guy who understands that sometimes life just throws you through a loop and you need a moment to pull it all back together. When I finally get home, Lydia's there, waiting. The second I walk through the door, she starts screaming at me, telling me to get lost and that I'm the one ruining everything. I just stare at her, feeling like I've heard it all before, and I head downstairs to crash on the couch, ignoring her like she's background noise. I didn't even try to fight back. It felt pointless. The next morning, I wake up and think, all right, it's time to pull everyone into this mess. I called up my parents and hers, and we all met up at the house. I figured if I was going to deal with this, I wanted all the cards on the table. We sit down and I lay it all out for them. Her parents are just sitting there, wide-eyed, and my parents are in disbelief too. They suggested all kinds of things. Counseling, maybe taking a break, trying to find some middle ground. I just nod, going along with it, but in the back of my mind, I'm already halfway out the door. A few weeks later, Lydia drops another bomb. She tells me she's pregnant and she's moving in with one of the guys. I raise an eyebrow, wondering how she could think this was all somehow normal. It's brutal, since I wanted a normal family for as long as I could remember, but she just kept saying, later, later. I couldn't resist the irony of the whole thing, so I said, why not move in with both? Seems like you like to keep your options open. She wasn't amused, but honestly, I couldn't care less at that point and just walked away. After Lydia dropped that bombshell about being pregnant and moving in with one of those guys, I knew the marriage was over, but it still took a while for the reality of it to settle in. It's funny how you think you're prepared for something, but when the moment actually comes, it hits you like a ton of bricks. The process of getting a divorce is so much more than just signing papers and calling it quits. It's sorting through years of shared memories, deciding who gets what, and untangling a life you once built together, piece by piece. The first thing we had to tackle was the living situation. She had already half moved in with the guy by the time we really got into the nitty-gritty of things, but she kept popping back into the house whenever she felt like it, rummaging through stuff and claiming this and that. It was like having an unwelcome guest who used to know every corner of your world. Every time I'd see her there, it was this awkward, tense dance where we'd both avoid eye contact, pretending we were strangers in the same room. She started packing her things slowly, one box at a time, like she was savoring the last bits of control she had over the place. We'd argue over the most ridiculous things. The kitchen appliances, the bookshelf, even the damn bathroom rug. It wasn't about the stuff, it was about the principle. The injustice of it all was just eating away at me every time I even heard her voice. At one point, I remember she tried to take the blender, claiming she'd used it more. I almost laughed, thinking, really? This is what it's come to? In the end, I let her take most of it. I just didn't have it in me to fight over material things. She could have the blender, the toaster, and whatever else. I'd rather just start fresh without any reminders of her around. Then there were the documents, mountains of paperwork to go through, legalese that made head spin, and endless back and forth with lawyers. I'd never dealt with lawyers before, and let me tell you, they're a different breed. My lawyer was this no-nonsense woman who saw right through Lydia's games. One of my coworkers went through a messy divorce as well and recommended her, and I could afford her with my raise. She was all business, sharp as a tack, and she didn't put up with any BS. Lydia's lawyer, on the other hand, seemed like he'd rather be anywhere else. He was one of those types who looked like he'd just wandered in off the street, probably fresh out of law school, still wet behind the ears. It became clear pretty quickly that he wasn't up for a fight, which suited me just fine. The main sticking point was proving the infidelity. Luckily for me, Lydia wasn't exactly discreet. Between the texts, the receipts for hotel rooms, and her friends who couldn't keep a secret to save their lives, it was almost too easy. I didn't even have to dig for it. The evidence just fell into my lap. I handed everything over to my lawyer, and she did the rest. Watching Lydia try to wriggle her way out of it was almost comical. People say divorces are rough, and they definitely are. But proving her cheating gave me a certain satisfaction I needed to move on. She kept saying it wasn't what it looked like, that she and the guys were just friends, that nothing really happened. But the facts were there, clear as day, and there was no arguing against it. When the judge finally handed down the decision, I felt this weird sense of relief mixed with sadness. Seeing the judge's face with one eyebrow raised when saying the outcome felt amazing. It's like she was ready for Lydia to start protesting the result right there, but nothing happened. It was over. Officially. Legally. I was free, but there was this lingering weight, like I was standing in the aftermath of a storm and still seeing debris scattered everywhere. Lydia got her fair share, and I kept the house, which felt like the only win I had left, besides a certain personal satisfaction in knowing that she won't be back. She took off to her new place with the guy, and the first few weeks were just quiet, eerily so. Adjusting to living alone again was strange. I'd walk around the house and see empty spaces where her stuff used to be, like ghostly outlines of a life that once was. The first few nights, I'd catch myself expecting her to walk through the door, or I'd see something that reminded me of her. I started clearing out all the things she left behind, boxing them up and hauling them to Goodwill or tossing them out. It was like purging the house of every last trace of her. At the same time, it was oddly liberating. I could finally start making the place my own again. I repainted the walls, bought new furniture, even rearranged the kitchen. I went for colors she never would have let me choose, bold reds and dark blues, and I threw out the frilly curtains she insisted on. I even got a new coffee maker, one of those fancy ones with a grinder built in. Every change felt like reclaiming a little bit of myself that I'd lost over the years. After the baby was born, I heard that Lydia's life seemed to spiral. She'd moved in with the guy, who I heard was hardly ever around. He'd come and go, and Lydia was left to juggle everything on her own. She'd occasionally text me updates which I ignored, and I'd get snippets through mutual friends about how things weren't going so great. Apparently, the guy wasn't too keen on being a dad, and the whole arrangement was falling apart. Then one day, he just took off. I guess having a newborn was more than he signed up for, and he bailed, leaving Lydia with a baby and a bunch of unpaid bills. I won't lie, I felt a certain satisfaction in knowing that she was getting a taste of her own medicine. But I also felt sorry for the kid, caught in the middle of this mess. A couple of weeks later, I'm home, enjoying a quiet evening, when I hear someone fiddling with the lock on my front door. At first, I think I'm imagining it, but then I hear it again, like someone trying to get in with a key. I walk over to the door, look through the peephole, and there she is. Lydia, holding her baby in one arm, trying to let herself in. I'd changed the locks not long after she moved out, and thank God I did, because the sight of her there, assuming she could just waltz right back in, made my blood boil. I yank open the door, and she looks up at me, feigning surprise, like she wasn't just caught trying to break in. "Oh, hey, I thought I'd just stop by and catch up," she says, smiling like nothing's happened. I stare at her for a long moment, wondering how she has the nerve. And she's got this look on her face, this half-hearted attempt at charm, and it's almost funny. She even dressed up a little, put on some makeup, but it's painfully obvious she's trying too hard. She looks tired, worn down, and the baby in her arms is squirming and fussing. The whole scene would be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. What are you doing here? I ask, barely holding back my annoyance. She shrugs like this is all perfectly normal and says she just wanted to see how I was doing. She tries to flirt, flashing this smile that used to work on me, but now, with the baby in her arms and our history hanging in the air, it's laughable. I almost feel bad for her, standing there, clutching at the last straws of whatever connection she thinks we still have. The whole thing feels surreal. Here she is, trying to rekindle something that's long dead, with her child from another man as if that's going to somehow soften me up. I watch her struggle to keep up this charade, but all I see is the wreckage of her choices. She finally realizes she's not getting anywhere, and her smile fades, replaced by a look of desperation. It's clear she thought she could just walk back into my life and pick up where she left off. But that's not happening. I lean against the doorframe, arms crossed, and let her stumble through her excuses, her pleas. Eventually, I tell her, "You made your choice, and I've made mine. There's nothing left for you here." She opens her mouth like she's going to say something, but I don't give her the chance. I shut the door, leaving her on the other side, and I walk away, feeling nothing but relief. I want to tell you that it felt amazing, but to be honest, it took so much strength to do that. She destroyed me. But the girl that I fell in love with, who I married, was in front of me asking for help. I could have taken her back, but I think if I did, I'll lose myself forever. I can't quite explain it. Maybe you get it. I don't know. It hurts still, but I'll try to get past this. I blocked her on everything and trying to work a bit harder and spend more time with my friends. Um, Dave has been checking up on me, and we have plans to meet up this weekend. Thanks for listening, and if something else major happens, I'll let you know.